Hey, Aubrey, mic check.
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Amy, it looks like we're just waiting for Maureen to have our full panel tonight, but we do have 6 total, so we do have a quorum. Amy, this is Aubrey. We do have a full panel now.
Oh, and there's Maureen. I just texted
Yeah.
her too, but she just showed up.
Yeah.
In my screen, so.
It took
Okay,
a long time.
we'll call this Planning Commission meeting to order. Let me get all my devices up so I can read everything. So welcome to the Planning Commission meeting tonight for December 8th, 2021, sorry. I, Amy Berry, Chair of the Planning Commission, hereby determine that the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic conditions existing in Salt Lake City, including, but not limited to, the elevated number of cases, that meeting at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who would be present. If you are participating remotely, I'm going to turn this over to Nick or whomever wants to do a briefing on how you can participate.
Thank you. This is Nick Norris. I'm the planning director for Salt Lake City, and wanted to quickly go over some basic information about the meeting and how everybody in attendance can participate. You can see on your screen that there's some basic information about how to join. Obviously, if you're in the WebEx meeting, you've figured that out, but if you're watching on either YouTube or on SLC TV and you want to join, these links are available. You can copy these links to access the meeting. They're also on the Planning Commission agenda from the Planning Division website at slc.gov/planning under Planning Commission. If you're having any sort of issues or you want to submit written comment during the meeting, excuse me, you can send us an email to planning.comments@slcgov.com. We're monitoring that email during the meeting, and so as soon as it gets through the systems, we will be able to help you out and we'll do our best to acknowledge receipt of your email and help you troubleshoot or read any comments, typed comments into the record. Aubrey, can you go to the next screen, please? To participate, if you're in the WebEx meeting, the easiest way to do it so that we know to call on you is on the bottom right-hand corner and is a small little hand icon. You can see it on your screen here on the bottom right corner of the presentation, outlined in orange and then red inside the orange box. If you click on that, it alerts us that you want to speak. We do ask that after you speak that you click on it a second time and it will lower your hand. And again, if there's any questions or if anybody's having any difficulties or want to submit written comments, you can at the planning.comments@slcgov.com email, and we will respond as quickly as we can.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Moving on through our agenda, we have a report of the chair, and I don't have anything special. Maureen, Vice Chair?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Thank you. The report of the director?
Yeah, hang on, let me fix my camera here. Yeah, so just wanted to give the Planning Commission a couple of updates on some activity at the City Council level of items that came before the Planning Commission in the past. Last night, the Planning Commission did make a couple of decisions on some zoning proposals that the Planning Commission has seen. The first one was the high volume water using land uses, water consuming land uses proposal. The council did adopt that last night. They did lower that cap. If you recall, the maximum amount for any individual land use was 300,000 in the initial proposal, 300,000 gallons. The council did lower that to 200,000 gallons. And they also took action asking not just the planning division, but other divisions involved with water issues in the city to propose some code changes to further help address water conservation and water preservation in the city, since it's such a pressing issue with our ongoing drought. And so you can look forward to that. City Council also denied a zoning map amendment around 1900 South and 1300 East. That proposal was go from, I think it was an arm of 30 or 35 to an arm of 45. They did deny that. And so that died. There wasn't any sort of development proposal associated with that project. So that's that. They also held several public hearings and approved a couple of alley vacations of what we call paper alleys, those alleys that were platted in original subdivisions but never actually built or never actually used, and now have structures and garages and fences and sometimes even large mature trees growing in the middle of them. So a couple of those were approved as well. And then they had a couple of public hearings that including the Bueno Avenue project, and they're scheduled to make some decisions on those as early as next week. The other thing that they did adopt after they've had it for a very long time, some of you probably were not even on, well, I know some of you were not on the Planning Commission, but several years ago, we proposed some changes to the Sugar House Business District zoning, primarily to address a change in state code that said standards needed to be objective. And so the Sugar House Community Plan has a bunch of design guidelines that were in the plan that the code required compliance with. However, they really weren't written in a way that made it easy to be objective. And so they could reasonably be interpreted to mean different things to different people. And so upon that change in state code, we proposed some changes to to make those guidelines standards in the code and make them more measurable so that they're not as subjective as they currently are in the community plan. And I think that is about it.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Moving on, I would be looking for a motion to approve our minutes from the November 10th meeting.
I'll move we approve the minutes for the previous meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Maureen and a second from Mike to approve the minutes. And I'll take a vote. Maureen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Okay. Mike?
Yes.
Andra?
Abstain?
Okay, John? John, if you were trying to speak, we can't hear you. John, doesn't look like you're muted, but you're not coming through.
I see that he doesn't have the microphone icon or the video icon. He's going to, oh, there he goes. Okay.
There he goes.
Yep.
I still can't hear him.
John, you're probably going to have to leave the meeting and rejoin in order to get that setting to work.
Okay, we'll move on. Andreas? Is Andreas unmuted as an attendee?
Yeah, I'll vote yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that motion passes. So hopefully John Lee looks like he got out, so he'll be coming back in. We'll move on to the first item in our public hearing, and that is a conditional use ADU at approximately 1849 East, 1300 South, case number PLN PCM 2021-00533. And the planner tonight for this is Chrissy.
Madam Chair, can we give John a minute to hop back in? It would be problematic for him to vote if he missed much of this.
Okay, let's take a couple minute break.
Thanks.
Okay, I see that John has rejoined. John, would you like to unmute and test it? We're still not hearing you. Aubrey, you might have to give him the phone number and that to call in. Please, thank you.
I'll text him right now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, John, Aubrey's going to text you the phone number on code so you can call in.
His microphone icon just showed up, but
Yeah, that's because I clicked the mute button on him and I was trying to see. John, you may also want to, if you're on a computer, down at the bottom of your screen on the arrow next to the mute button, you can open up your microphone settings that way. And there might be an issue with the microphone being on the right setting there. So you may want to troubleshoot that as well. Hey, Aubrey, can you ask John if he can at least hear us?
I'm pretty sure he can because when we asked him to get off and get back on, he did.
He says he can hear us and he's tried all the microphone settings, but none of them are working. So I did text him the phone number and passcode. So he'll have to get out and join via telephone.
I think if he can hear us, then we can probably proceed. He could message us any questions he has, or seems like he could use an icon, assuming that all works. Thumbs up icon on a vote. But I think we can proceed as long as we have confirmation at this point that he can hear.
Okay. I feel confident we have that. He's still on the attendees list, so.
Yep.
Aubrey, if you just want to communicate, if he sends you a message, let us know.
Sure.
All right. And hopefully he can call in as well and then we can hear him. But anyway. Okay, Chrissy, the time is yours for your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So you should be able to see the presentation in front of you. So this is a petition for conditional use is for a new ADU over a detached two-car garage located at approximately 1849 East, 1300 South. The subject parcel is zoned R1 5000 single-family residential and is also in the Yalecrest compatible infill overlay zone. Staff is recommending the commission approve the request with conditions. The proposed detached ADU would be located in the rear yard. There's currently a detached garage on site that would be rebuilt at the existing footprint, but is now proposed to have an addition of the ADU above. The ADU is approximately 416 square feet and cantilevers over the garage, which has a floor area of 459 square feet. The total footprint of both the garage and ADU together would be approximately 566 square feet. You can see the ADU outlined in red on the site plan. The structure measures approximately 22 feet in height. Public comments have raised concerns about the structure's height. However, the commission should note that the proposed structure meets all lot and bulk standards in the zoning regulations. The ADU ordinance allows second-story ADUs to be equal to the height of the primary dwelling, up to 24 feet in height. In this case, the primary dwelling is 22 feet to the roof pitch, and the proposed ADU is also proposed at 22 feet, which meets the ADU ordinance. While the property is located in the Yalecrest compatible infill overlay, which typically has more restrictive accessory building standards, it was determined that the ADU ordinance prevails, allowing the structure to be up to the height of the primary dwelling. The Transportation Division has also confirmed that there is sufficient parking for the proposed ADU, and any windows within 10 feet of a property line are required to be glazed or frosted. This shows the proposed elevations. You can see this is the front of the ADU on the lower left-hand corner, and you can see how it cantilevers over the garage. And this is because second-story ADUs that exceed the 17-foot height that can go up to the height of the primary structure must be 10 feet from the property line. So the applicant was required to set that ADU portion of the building 10 feet away from the property, while the garage was allowed to stay at the existing footprint. These images show the proposed location of the ADU and the existing garage, which would be rebuilt. The garage would be rebuilt at the same footprint as the existing garage. So as far as public comments, staff received several comments in opposition to the ADU. They were primarily concerned with the height and the interpretation of the height compared to the Yellcrest compatible overlay zone. Additionally, the Yellcrest neighborhood organization submitted a letter today expressing concern with the height, which is included in your Dropbox account. Staff did receive one comment in support of the ADU that was received after the staff report was published, and that is also in your Dropbox account. So as mentioned earlier, planning staff recommends that the commission approve the conditional use request for an accessory dwelling unit with one condition. The proposal meets all the applicable standards discussed in the staff report. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrissy. Any commissioners have questions for staff at this point? Okay, moving on. I think, is your applicant here?
He is. Clayton Morgan should be on the line.
Is he muted? Mr. Morgan, can you hear us?
Aubrey,
I
we
just
need a-
moved him over to a panelist.
Okay.
So Clayton, you should be able to mute and unmute yourself. And if you have a presentation, I've given you that ability to share your screen if you choose.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I don't have a presentation. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First, I want to thank you for your time and consideration, and start by saying that we love this neighborhood and strongly believe our proposed ADU is not only consistent with the dozens of other homes that are adjacent to us in the nearby blocks that already have similar structures, but will enhance the diversity of housing in the neighborhood. We understand and support the city's development standards, and we think the city is doing the right thing by allowing ADUs to address some of the demands on housing that we're experiencing right now. And I think the city has struck a difficult balance between the needs of the current residents and the current demands and future demands of the city. We followed all the rules outlined by the city while we were developing this proposal, and there were quite a few of them. And we don't feel that those folks that argue that ADUs are going to become commonplace or change the character of the neighborhoods are correct. It's a pretty difficult process, and it's going to be, it's difficult to get a complying structure approved. We want to state that approval of our proposal will allow us the opportunity to help some family members with housing who could otherwise not afford to live in our neighborhood. And we feel we've been very thoughtful in developing this plan, and agree with the staff that the staff report that commented on the issue of mitigating any anticipated detrimental effects associated with the proposal, and we feel we have, and we strongly encourage the Planning Commission to approve our proposal. And I'm available for any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Do any commissioners have questions for the applicant at this moment? Okay, we will move on to the public hearing portion of this. If you are in attendance and you wish to speak to this item, please hit that hand icon in the lower right-hand portion of your screen to let us know you wish to speak, but I don't see any. Do you, Nick?
Yes, we
Oh,
do
there
have
we do.
one hand up.
Okay.
Jen Colby. Jen, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, and
should
before
be
you
able-
start, just to give lay of the land, Ms. Colby, if you want to state your name for the record, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Great. Am I unmuted?
You
Yes,
are.
we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Jen Colby, District 4. After hearing this presentation, I am in favor of this approval. I would also remind the Planning Commission that currently I live in District 4. There's not a single lot that's zoned R1 in District 4, even though many of our homes are actually still single family use. Therefore, ADUs are a permitted use, not a conditional use. Every other district in the city has conditional use, and I strongly support changing that in the future. But I just want to remind everyone that Central City and University neighborhoods are very different than a lot of the rest of the city. I encourage you to look at our master plans. I know that's part of your responsibilities, but sort of an east side, west side dialogue is really not fair. And again, ADUs are permitted in our neighborhoods in houses that look just the same. I'm not sure why this is an issue other places. I would also speak up for being able to provide housing for relatives. I now have aging parents out of state who are divorced and alone. My father happens to have a house with an ADU. He rented to some lovely people, and I don't have to worry about him out of state nearly as much as my mother, where I would love to have an ADU for her, but where she lives and her zoning is not allowing it. And I don't know what we're going to do, but she is in serious trouble and wants to stay in her home. And so anything we can do to provide 8 to 80 options so families can stay in our neighborhoods and we can help our families, as long as we make sure these don't turn into short-term rentals. I think that's a huge concern in our neighborhoods. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I don't see any other hands. Any email comments?
None at this time. Thanks, Amy.
Okay. Well, with that, we will close the public comment period for this and bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, at this time, do you have any questions, comments, or thoughts for the applicant, staff, or each other? Now's the time. Or a motion.
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead, Andres.
For staff, is there a basement of this ADU proposal?
Yes, there is. Well, not for the, there's
Okay.
a basement for the garage.
So there's a basement under the garage.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
This is
Okay,
Burrow.
motion?
I have a question. A lot of
Thank
the
you.
comments state that this is currently a 1-car garage and it's going to be a 2-car garage. But maybe that's not true. It says you said they're using an existing footprint.
Yes, so they're using the existing footprint, which is subject, the one condition is that it's subject to meeting the standards of our non-complying structures ordinance. But they are proposing to meet the same square footage. They're just going to put 2 cars in instead of 1.
Oh, okay.
Well,
And then
today.
the home, the residence that's on there has a hip roof, so it's only 22 feet high right in the middle of the building, right?
It's 22 feet to the tallest pitch.
Right. So it looks shorter than that, except for like the cone on top of it. And I guess it looks like the ADU will also have a hip roof, but maybe its wall height won't be as low as the wall height for the existing home.
Yep, you're correct. And I did look into that, and we don't distinguish between those in the AD ordinance. So as long as the overall height is the same, it's allowed.
And also, it sounds like the city attorney determined that the ADU ordinance overrides the Gilchrist, the YIO, what's that called?
Yep, the Yellcrest compatible infill overlay zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had internal discussions about that, and Paul can jump in, but along with the planning director and the city attorney, it was determined that the language in the ADU ordinance specifically says that that section prevails over the Yellcrest compatible overlay.
Does it?
And
does
just to clarify, the zoning administrator, in this case Joel Patterson, has the authority to interpret the code. My role in this was to offer an opinion as to how a court would interpret those competing provisions, and we go through this statutory construction exercise. And it is my opinion that if a court were to look at our interpretation of that, the court would uphold that that interpretation, that the ADU provisions are superior to any other competing provisions in the code.
So that's the truth. The ADU provisions would override any other overlay, but not historic district or
So
everything.
yeah, so this is Nick Norris. So basically what the provision in the code says, and I'm happy to read it to you, is that basically any sort of yard bulk or height in the what it's 21A 40050, which is the accessory building regulations of the underlying zoning district or any applicable overlay zoning district unless otherwise regulated by this section. And this section, because it has a specific height requirement, it would basically take precedent over any other height requirement. It does not take precedent over the local historic district or the Historic Landmarks Commission's authority.
Those are specifically
In the code.
carved out. Okay, just those two. Well, I think that sounds like it's a little bit of a surprise to the people who worked on the Yellcrest historic overlay rules, from my reading of the comments. Okay.
Thanks, Amy. Any other questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make a motion, please.
Thanks, Sandra. Go ahead.
Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use request, PLN PCM 2021-00533, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. The condition for reference is the single condition that the rebuild and replacement of the existing garage is subject to meeting the rebuild requirements of 21A.38.050, non-complying structures, and all other applicable zoning standards.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. I have a motion from Andra and a second from Mike. Let's take a vote. Oh, and John Lee, if you will text your vote to operate at this time.
John has called in and he is
has.
unmuted.
Okay, John, let's start with you.
Yes.
Thank you. Andra.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Andreas.
I'll vote yes.
Thank you. Mike.
Yes.
And Amy.
Yes.
Okay. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for that. Moving on. Good luck, Mr. Morgan, on your ADU build.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, we have the Wasatch Avenue Trust plan development at approximately 1387 West Wasatch Avenue. This is case number PLN PCM 2021-00681 and PLN SUB 2021-00938. The planner tonight is new for us. Diana Martinez, welcome for your first agenda item. Diana, we cannot hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that welcome. I appreciate that. I'm sorry that I can't come to you visually. I had some video complications, but I am going to share with you. Okay. So I'm going to jump ahead. This is the property here outlined in yellow. It's on Wasatch Avenue. It's 2 properties in from Navajo Street. You can see that there is an existing house on the property. I hope you can see my hand, the little cursor guide. There is a garage behind this tree, or below this tree rather. The house will remain on the property. The applicant is requesting approval of a planned development to subdivide the subject property into 2 lots with 2 zoning modifications. So I'm so sorry that this plan is so hard to read. It's very clustered, but I tried to highlight what we're going to be talking about. So the left side, lot 1, the red dotted line indicates the property line, that the new property line that will go between the 2 lots. So lot 1, lot 2. The first modification that is being requested is for lot 1. Because of the existing house and the new lot line for the east side, they will need a modification approval for the 7.17 feet that they are going to have to deal with. They won't be able to meet the 10 feet that's required. So that is the first modification. The second modification, zoning modification that they're asking for, is the lot width. And that is for both lots. That's going to be for lot 1 and lot 2. And that's indicated by the long yellow line at the top. I think you can see it. It's about 37.53 feet for both. This is the only way to really divide this lot properly to keep them within the lot area requirement. So they're both meeting 5,000 square feet. They're actually at 5,015 square feet for both lot, but they cannot meet the width. So that is where the second modification comes in. The applicant is complying with the requirements of the plan development standards and the subdivision standards. Therefore, the planning staff is recommending approval of the application. Regarding public comment, we did get 1 comment in favor, which is in your staff report. The community council, unfortunately, was not able to meet with the applicant, so we don't have a recommendation from them or any comments from them. And then this afternoon, I did receive a comment, or excuse me, a phone call in opposition. However, I was able to call back the neighbor, and she actually had 3 concerns that I think that I was able to address. I think she was okay with my answers, and I think she was understanding of what the applicant is requesting. So I think we're okay on that one. The applicant should be on the line, and he does have a presentation for you. But to reiterate, this planning staff is recommending approval of the application.
Okay, thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff from the commission at this time? I have a question. Are we going to require an easement for that driveway that goes through the middle?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So that will be a shared driveway between the 2 homes, the proposed home and the existing home. So they will need to have an easement for that.
Is that, because it's not a condition listed in the staff report, is that something that is just required by code?
It is, right. That would just be required. I believe the transportation engineer actually addressed that in his review. So that would just be a next step.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we will move on to the applicant. I see, I might butcher your last name, Jake Billeteri.
Wow, that was actually really good. Spot on.
Really?
Yeah, no, that's how we say it in our family. So awesome.
Well, then wonderful. You are up. I hear you have a presentation. Can you share your screen at this time?
Absolutely. Uh-oh,
Okay.
system preferences.
Give me a second. I need to move over.
Okay. Once you start your presentation, Jake, you'll have 10 minutes.
You should be good to go.
You just removed him from the, oh, there he jumped up. Okay. You'll have 10 minutes for your presentation, but feel free not to take that full time, but the time is yours now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it seems like I'm having some issues with sharing my screen. It's just a short couple slide presentation, so I'll kind of go over the bullet points instead. The lot on which we're requesting this plans development and subdivision is an extra large lot located within the West Side Master Plan. The lot will be subdivided obviously into 2 lots, both roughly 37.5 feet in width. And as Diana alluded to, the 2 modifications that we are requesting are to that lot width requirement, as well as to the side yard setback. The shared drive aisle will lead to 2 new proposed garages. And we are proposing this project because we believe that it contributes to infill options utilizing an extra large lot. It won't necessitate the demolition of any existing housing, and it will add a single family lot in an area where it is desired. The width of the proposed lots, while not compliant with the code, is a width that is seen in other areas throughout the neighborhood. I actually believe that there's quite a few lots in the area that are roughly 32 to 37 feet in width. And another thing that we would like to highlight is that because of the shared drive aisle between the 2 properties, even though the property line will be less than required by code, there is a significant difference between, a significant distance between the 2 structures once the second structure is built. And that's all I had. So any questions?
Okay, thank you, Jake. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Okay, we will open the public comment period at this time, and I do not see any hands raised for this, Nick. Do you see something I don't? They're shaded a little hard to see on my screen, so.
I am not seeing any hands, and I'm not sure if anybody has submitted an email requesting to speak on this.
There are no emails at this time.
Okay. Give it a minute, a second. Okay, with that, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commissioners. Thoughts, questions, motion?
Make a motion, please.
Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the commission approve the Wasatch Avenue Trust Plan Development PLN PCM 2021-00681.
And I think you need to read the other
The other number is PLN sub 2021-00938.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, I heard Maureen first. So I have a motion from Andrea and a second from Maureen. We'll take a vote. Mike?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Andreas?
I'll vote yes.
Hey, John?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes unanimously. Good luck, Mr. Villager. You have approval from the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we have the next agenda item is the Central Park Townhomes Plan development at approximately 1861 South through 1300 East. Case number PLN PCM 2021-00886 and PLN SUB 2021-00882. And the planner tonight for this is Aaron.
Good evening. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So this is a request for a plan development and preliminary plat approval to construct 5 new 3-story townhomes at approximately 1861 South, 1300 East, or 1871. That's the proposed address if this were approved. There are 3 modifications that are being requested. The first, excuse me, is to modify the minimum lot width from 25 feet to 20 feet. 25 is the minimum lot width allowed in the RMF 30 district. Modifying the minimum lot size for 3 units. This will not affect the total density of the lot, but reducing them below the allowed 3,000 square feet, and 5 additional feet of building height on to accommodate rooftop decks. And staff is recommending approval with conditions. Let's get moving here. Here's a rendering of the proposed structure from 1300 East. They're planning to do glass garage doors. That's a new feature that wasn't included in the staff report. And then there's glass on the front door as well. They've also modified the landscaping plan a little bit. I'll show that when we get further along. So we'll get to those requested modifications. Here's the additional height for 5 feet. This would be the elevation facing the park. And they're wanting the extra 5 feet for railings for rooftop decks. And this is similar to a project that was approved by this body on Downington Avenue. And they also have rooftop decks of a similar height. That was a rezone as well, but rezoning to this RMF 30 district. So the height is similar in that character. Here's the lot width modification. The 3 central lots would be narrower than the allowed 25 feet, but the overall square footage for the entire lot would still meet the minimum requirement for 5 units. And you see here, there are also 3 units where the minimum lot size would be smaller. Wanted to bring up a few things that if this project were denied, there's some projects that could still be approved that would have similar impacts as the proposed project. The first, the applicant could submit through a project for 3 single-family attached units with the same footprint. Not much would change other than the density. Or they could submit for a 5-unit multifamily building with a 10-foot setback at the north. I've tried to illustrate here what that would look like. Okay, so our recommendation, the first was for a pedestrian walkway from 1300 East. There's always a spelling error or a typo in Aaron's staff reports. I wrote south in the staff report, but it is 1300 East. From the sidewalk through here to keep pedestrian traffic from those drive entries and keep it out here for people coming and going from the proposed project. And they're complying with that. As you can see here, there's also, it modified the landscape plan and they're putting taller trees along this south elevation, zelkovas, which can get up to 30-something feet tall. And there's the location of those zelkovas. So again, my recommendation is approval with that condition for the pathway, which wasn't submitted at the time of the publishing of the staff report. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Any questions for staff at this time?
Can I ask a question? This looks to me like a great project. I'm really concerned by the amount of green grass in the project. Is that something we can put as a conditional use that we require zeros? I mean, we're paying people right now to take out this green grass. And yet, so I'm confused as to why we're putting in renderings with this much green grass.
So I do see all of that grass. This rendering does not reflect the actual landscaping, and maybe the applicant can speak to that. A condition would have to be in line with one of the standards. So under those landscaping standards in the staff report. If you can find something in there that gels with those standards, then that would fit. But you can see here, it looks like they're really going for a shrub look. Those are a lot of ornamental grasses and shrubs here in this area between 1300 East and the building. So I'll let Chris Manning or Rick Plew, whoever is going to speak on this, kind of answer that question for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we will turn it over. My cheat sheet says the applicant is Rick or Chase, but I see Chase is in the panelist list now.
There were some health issues, so I'm not sure who will be speaking specifically.
It's Chase.
Yeah,
He's
this is
unmuted.
Chase. Can you guys hear me?
Do you have a presentation you want to give, Mr. Manning?
I do, yep.
Okay, so once you get sharing ability and start your presentation, you will have 10 minutes.
Alrighty, thank you.
Chase, you should be able to share your screen by
Okay.
clicking on that bottom icon. There we go.
All right. Can you see that?
Yes.
Everybody see that? Okay, perfect. All right. So we will address the landscaping issue shortly that was brought up previously. I wanted to start out with a comment, an issue that has been brought up previously, which is basically the idea of cramming or putting too many units in on the land. And we wanted to bring up that previously we had a duplex located right here, and then there's a triplex located right here. And we just wanted to note that, you know, we're basically replacing 5 units with 5 units. Hope that kind of makes sense and rings a bell. The next issue that we've had that people have brought up, I'll go to here, this screen, is pulling out on a 13th East. We know it's a busy road, especially in the morning and, you know, at midday and in the afternoon. And so we wanted to make sure that this circular driveway is understood, that people will be entering from this south side. They'll be able to pull in their garages, and then they'll be able to exit up here on the north side safely, going forward without having to look around these, you know, backing out into the traffic that can be an issue. We wanted to note as well that these will be for sale units, as well as regarding the landscaping, it'll be a low water use ideology behind it, and low light pollution. Right. Another thing that we wanted to bring up was we conducted a shade study, and we have a project manager from MGB&A with us. So Brandon, if you're there, could you just kind of walk through what you guys found on that shade study regarding
I'm gonna go over to be a panelist since you're part of the applicant team. You should be able to mute and unmute yourself.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we do have a shade study. I'll bring that up in just a second. Wanted to just quickly touch base on the lawn comment. As Aaron mentioned, this is predominantly shrubs and ornamental grasses. We only have a total of 733 square feet of lawn, and those panels are in the backyards of the site, and those are basically just for resident use. So very small area for overall lawn. And then as far as the shade study, what we've done is we've created a, let's see, I'm trying to hit share. How is it going to let me do it?
CC&R is going to
Okay, so
You should be able to share your screen now.
okay.
There we go.
All right, can everybody see my PDF here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what we've done is we've taken a study and done this in a 3D rendering that allows us to get sun positioning during certain times of year, during certain times of day. So we've gone March through October, and we've gone from 9 a.m. and roughly 3-hour increments down to 5 p.m. So 9, 12, 3, and 5. And we felt like those were the most appropriate times of day to take a study on, simply because that was going to be the most logical time for when, number one, the sun is up, and then two, there's potential uses in that area. I'd also like to point out, as part of this, you can see that in here there are a number of large mature trees all around the site, and so we felt that any shade that's coming off of this building is basically more or less already kind of there from the trees, but in order to fulfill the requirement, we've gone ahead and gone through this. So March is probably the one time where we really come furthest out into the road. We do not reach across to the neighbors, which we felt was a good thing. That's at 9 a.m., noon, it's about like this, so on and so forth. We do stretch it out a little bit here. April, it's very similar. May becomes less. June even less. July even less. August we start to come back a little bit. September comes back a little bit, and then in October, the only major shade difference goes back into the park. And again, we've got large mature trees that are buffered all around. We do not feel that this would impact any of the native plants, simply because if those trees are already there, anything that is going to show up natively is already well adapted to shade, and so any additional shade that we're going to be providing from the building should be minimal as far as impact to any habitat. So we felt pretty good about this, and hopefully this is meeting the desired intent of your requests on that. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Okay, is that the end of your collective presentation, Mr. Manning?
Great, thank you. Thanks, Brandon, for helping us out with that.
Yep, no problem.
Pillars, okay. Uniform presentation on the streetscape.
All right. We would like to now open it up for questions.
Okay.
For anybody else.
Okay. All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Okay,
I have a question for staff.
Go ahead, Andres. Go ahead.
So by right, the height cannot be more than 30 feet, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and they're requesting to go up to 35 feet in height, correct?
Correct, for those railings on the rooftop deck.
Okay, and the lot width, by standard, they have to be at 25 feet, and they're looking for a modification to go down to 20 feet, is that correct?
Yeah, and that 20 is approximately 20, more or less, so yeah.
Okay, so it seems to me they're trying to make smaller, I guess, complexes. Would that be the right word to say? Smaller, they can fit more in one lot,
Smaller
one
units.
property?
Mm-hmm. Smaller lots with smaller units, yes.
Okay. Smaller units. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andreas. So, Aaron, can you bring up the rendering?
I'm happy to. Can Nick or Aubrey? Oh, there I am. Thank you.
Okay, so to the applicant, I know the renderings can always not necessarily show everything you want, but you know, one of the things that during my time on the Planning Commission, which is coming up on 4 years, we've paid a lot of attention to how we're engaging the street. I'm never a fan of garages being what's engaging to the street, but I understand there are certain lots that it just has to happen this way. But we've also paid really close attention to the home's entrances. So they're not just, they don't look like just a door on the side of a building. And this rendering feels like that to me. I feel like you need to do better for the actual home entrances to make them look inviting and appealing to the street. And so what else do you think you can do here besides this jut out of a brick block above the door entrance?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Alrighty. Yeah, so regarding that, we've been discussing that with Aaron, and which we find, you know, adding that side light in, that can help that you know, that streetscape view as you're walking along the sidewalk. And I think including the glass garage doors also are very, very appealing. You know, I think it draws your attention, and especially, you know, on the doors now, they, you know, they get them to look really good. We also have the railing and the decks that can also, you know, help from that, add interest to that streetscape view.
Yeah, I think the railings are nice. I just think I dislike having the garages be such a prominent visual focal point. That the entrance to the actual home, the doors don't I don't see them as much, and I don't find them appealing. And that's something that we've really tried to pay a lot of attention to in plan developments and whatnot, that we're having some, that it's actually inviting. So I'd like some things that you can do to decrease the visual importance of those garages and emphasize it on the actual door entrance. Would be a very nice thing, whatever your project ends up being. They pay attention to that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with Amy. I think that there could be a lot more thought into the hierarchy of the way that you would enter and the procession from the street to the front doors of these units. The other thing that I usually have issue with is when you get into these types of developments and then start changing materials so often, it starts to get really busy and a little bit overwhelming to the eye. So another suggestion would be the front facade could be simplified a little bit more, maybe reducing the number of material changes. And I think that would help with the scale. Maybe changing the material at the entry so that you have an indicator of where the entrance is, but then making the upper level feel heavier because that's the main portion of the building would, I think, help a lot with this composition. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for the applicant?
Madam Chair, this is Nick. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just looking at the rendering, I'm trying to figure out where the door is to the unit on the right. It doesn't look like it shows up on the rendering, and so I want to make sure that that's accurate.
I think it's mirrored, and so it's next to the other door.
The door is actually set back on lot 5. And RMF 30 does not have garage standards like single family districts do for, like we require, you can't have the projecting garage. So zoning wise, yes, but design wise, plan development standards wise, that could be an issue.
I'm definitely not trying to hold them to a higher degree that we've held other projects in the past. I actually am trying to be consistent with how the Planning Commission has been viewing these types of projects during my time, which is all I can go on. Okay, with that, we will move on. We'll do a public comment period, and I'll allow you, the applicant, to address anything that comes up during that time. So I'm going to open the public comment period. If you are in attendance and you wish to speak, please raise your hand in the lower right-hand portion. You'll be called upon. Is the community council? Is Judy?
Yep.
And I have it. Okay.
Yep.
So we'll start with Judy. All the other comments, please state your name for the record when you're called upon, and then you will have 2 minutes. This is a public comment period. We don't stop for a back and forth Q&A. However, if you have questions, the 2 minutes is your time. I will be writing down any questions that come up, and then I will pose them to the applicant or staff once I close the public comment period. So feel free to ask them. We just won't stop for a back and forth time period. Okay, with that, Nick, go ahead and start.
Yeah. So first up is Judy Short. Judy, you are unmuted.
Thank you. This is Judy Short. I'm the land use chair for the Sugar House Community Council. And we noticed this the same way we always do. We put it on our website and in our newsletter for November and December. And it was on the November 15th meeting of the Land Use Committee. I have at least 19 pages of comments attached to my letter, and approximately 2 people are in favor. Everyone else is against it. Mr. Manning needs to know if he's going to do a project in Sugar House, he needs to spell Sugar House as 2 words. And the name of Central Park is not at all acceptable for this small, sleepy little place of respite in Sugar House. Allen Park is not the kind of park to throw a ball with your son or play soccer. And we don't believe asking for all these variances and exceptions makes this a more enhanced product. In fact, building the townhomes taller is detrimental to the style of the neighborhood. 5 units is detrimental to instead of 3 is detrimental to the proposed buyer, who will pay a fortune to live in a skinny, awkward building. The patio on the west side is fine for a barbecue or having a drink, but the traffic might be too intense to make it really desirable most of the time. The greenery along the front sidewalk doesn't seem to be inviting between the street and the garage door, and the rooftop decks invade the privacy of the neighbors on Westminster Avenue. Mr. Manning indicates he'll save some of the trees. In fact, nearly every tree that was on the 2 parcels is gone. He's not adding a bus stop. It has been there for at least 30 years. He plans to add lots of exterior lighting like the project on the north. In fact, the project on the north glows like a Christmas tree at night, disturbing the animals in the neighborhood because it's so bright. The 5-foot buffer on the north side is too narrow to buffer anything, and the row of bushes shown won't help. The building will still tower over the park. The purpose of a planned development is to provide an enhanced product, something that just abiding by the land use regulations itself wouldn't achieve. As far as we can see, this is squeezing 5 units in where 3 would be very comfortable. But the units that were removed, those 5 units were affordable units, and there's nothing affordable about this project. This is the loss of 5 more affordable housing units in our neighborhood, and Sugar House can't afford to lose more affordable units. A planned development needs to achieve one of the 5 objectives. This doesn't meet the preservation of open space and natural lands. All the trees have been already removed, rather than planning the development around existing trees. The development comes right to the edge of the redeveloped parcel, rather than being an enhancement to the park. There was no attempt to preserve, restore, or come up with an adaptive reuse of the buildings. They were just removed. The building scale of this project is way out of touch with the historic development pattern of this neighborhood. It doesn't give a single nod to the surrounding neighborhood. This parcel is in a wonderful part of Sugar House, next to Allen Park and across from Westminster College. There's terrific architecture all around, and the bungalows are wonderful. The parcel could have 3 tastefully designed townhomes on them that fit the size, scale, and feel of the area, while adding to the character. Instead, we see something that appears totally out of place before us for consideration. He has said these will be much better than the units on the north. We're not sure that a 19 to 20 foot wide unit is better. His lot size is equal to that of the Downingtown unit, but the units are much smaller. Please deny the request for a planned unit development and deny the request for a subdivision. Ask the petitioner to start over and bring something forward that fits the neighborhood in the spirit of the planned unit development ordinance that is no larger than 3 dwelling units and 30 feet high. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Judy.
Alrighty. Aaron, could I have you share your screen, please?
Hang on, we're going to continue with the public
Yeah.
input.
Oh,
We're
okay.
not finished with the
Ne-
public hearing yet.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Next up, I have Cindy Cromer. Cindy, you are unmuted.
Thank you. My comments tonight fall into 2 categories, practical and conceptual. First, the practical ones. A normal person does not use a garage exclusively for parking. At best, 1 car will be in the garage. We know this. Any off-site parking further compromises the character of the neighborhood and the park. Number 2, by exploiting the site, the developer is exacerbating the challenges associated with infill construction. The construction phase will either impact the park, the public street already jammed with traffic, or the neighbors. We know this. Additionally, at a more conceptual level, the mass of the proposed building is misplaced on the interior of the block. The staff report makes frequent comparisons to the townhouses on Downingtown and 13th East. They are on a corner, whereas 1861 is next to open space and a single-family zone. It's very different than the existing townhouses. Gestalt psychology is about the whole relative to the sum of the parts. The staff report addresses specific elements of the proposal. I would say that the yeses there are marginal C minuses, but this infill is brain surgery on the streetscape of 13th East, and you just should not accept a project that's a string of C minuses here. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you.
Next up on the list is Jen Colby. Jen, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Since I'm here, I guess I'll comment. This is Jen Colby. I live in District 4. I want to concur with the chair's comments about the garages facing the street and the streetscape. And I would say that this, I can't believe this is being proposed in 2021 as a urban form, even though it has to do with parking regulations and the fact that we seem to be incapable of getting people to have options besides driving. It kills walkability. It's unbelievably depressing to see this as a proposal. And I am trying to understand if the existing houses have already been demolished. I concur with the Sugar House Community Council's comments regarding the mind-boggling waste of taking 5 existing units that could be rehabilitated that are already affordable and already built out, that fit the neighborhood very well, and convert them into this sort of, I mean, it's like we've faced some sort of equivalent of a redo of 60s era Soviet design brought to us by market forces in the United States. I just can't understand what is happening to our community. This is the last kind of project we want to encourage people to be buying up as real estate speculators, older houses in the neighborhoods. We've seen these articles about how much money is floating around here, and proposing these kind of projects that only increase the cost of housing, do not fit the neighborhood, and just undermine the character of our city. I'm stunned that this has gotten this far and that anyone thinks this is acceptable for our neighborhood. I highly recommend. There are many good urban videos out there. I've gotten down a rabbit hole with Not Just Bikes about Amsterdam and Dutch planning. We are so far behind. I can't believe what's happening to our city, and I'm extremely disappointed, and this should be denied flat out, and we need a much better proposal. And if the houses are still existing, I would hope this person would just sell out, let somebody else do the right thing, and go find a scraped lot
That's
somewhere.
time.
Thank you.
That's time. Thank you, Ms. Colby.
All right. Next on the list in order of appearance is Casey O'Brien Mcdonough. Casey, you are unmuted. You were. Hang on. There we go.
There we go. Made it happen. Hey, thanks for letting me speak tonight. I live in the Avenues, but I drive past this project often, taking my daughter back and forth from Highland. And I was listening to all the presentation. I just want to make a few notes. So it's interesting, I think, when developers bring up what was on the lot as an existing structure, which we all know very well is gone. So I find it a little bit disingenuous to say that, well, we had 5 units before and we're getting 5 units, because we're talking about apples and oranges. I say that because, you know, we're talking about giving them extra, more height, more density in trade for what was there, the historic fabric of the city next to Allen Park, an historic park. And so I don't think that's a good trade. And on top of that, I think when we look at the buildings, having the height, having decks on top of the roofs, it doesn't, I don't believe, give our city an advantage. It gives the developer and the people who buy those expensive homes an advantage. It's definitely a disadvantage to any adjacent property owners to have people looking over that way from their rooftops down into the park. It makes the property valuable. It makes the new homes very valuable, but I don't think that's why we should be giving people extra height. They can make plenty of money with what they bought and what is currently zoned. I think if you're going to give them extra, it should be a much more well-designed project without garage doors facing the street, possibly with less density, but maybe you give them the height for the rooftop units. Maybe they could spend more money and put the garages underneath, like you see on projects on the corner of 17th South and 9th East. So I would, as a resident of Salt Lake City, I would hope that you would not give them all these extras. They know what they bought. They know what they could build. I don't think it's good for the neighborhood. I don't think it's good for the city. I don't think it's good for Allen Park. And so thanks for hearing my comments.
Thank you. Will you state your name for the record?
Oh yeah, sure. It's Casey Mcdonough.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the list is Patrick DePaulis. Patrick, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to echo what Casey O'Brien Mcdonough just said, as well as Judy Short and everybody else who just spoke, just to say this plan development does not meet the master plan for Sugar House and basically the preservation portion of what we want to do with our community. Everything that's been said about the garage doors, the height, the width. I mean, as far as zoning, this might fit, but it doesn't fit the neighborhood. And I think this is something that the Planning Commission really needs to take a hard look at. Mr. Manning has proposed 5 units and cutting into 5 sewers on 13th East, which is a brand new road. It was just repaved after 100 years and probably won't be done for another 100 years. So we're gonna have to deal with potholes from expansion and contraction on 13th East. As far as the trees, all the trees have been removed. Any tree there's one mulberry tree, I think, up near the park strip. I think that's the only tree that was left. So let's not play any games and be saying, oh, we're going to save the trees here. The existing Prescott Mears structure on the corner of Downington and 13th East, I believe that they wanted to build 4 units there and the Planning Commission only allowed 3. I'm not sure about that, but it just seems like that if you have 3 units that aren't trying to excessively consume every cubic inch of space and fill it with concrete and cut out sunlight to the park. I understand the shade study was minimal. Stand there and watch a sunset at night and then tell me how minimal that is and what we're going to be missing. The city just spent $7.5 million in Allen Park. We need to come together to stop these type of developments. We need to all think about what we want for our communities. Thank you.
If you would state your name for the record, please.
Patrick DePaulis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DePaulis.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have, hang on. My screen just jumped all over. Is it Thea Brannon? Thea, hopefully I pronounced your name right. I apologize if not, but you are unmuted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hi. Thank you for taking our comments. Can you hear me?
Yes, please
Yeah,
state your name for the record first.
Thea Brannon.
Perfect.
I'm a member of Friends of Allen Park and participated in trying to help save the park. I really feel that this development is completely unsuited. It encroaches onto the park far more than the development on the north side, which is buffered by the creek and a whole bunch of trees. These people have put out a design, which I think actually is probably a pretty cut rate architectural design that doesn't serve the neighborhood, is completely inappropriate, top heavy. It's just plain tacky. And, you know, maybe it belongs on the west side where all the modern stuff is, but it really doesn't work. And it's on an extremely busy street. It's too big. 5 things for that lot is much too big. It needs to be. And that shade study is deceiving because trees don't give total shade. A building gives absolute total shade. So, but it's mostly the design and the fact that it's too many units and there's no need to be greedy. It's really important for the future because if you approve this design, then other people are going to come along and say, oh, well, look, that was, you know, this gives precedent. So I really encourage you to please not approve this request. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let me do a quick scan of any additional, just a reminder, if you have already spoken on this, to click that hand button. So we can see, it looks like everybody who had their hand up has spoken.
We don't have any emails at this time.
Okay. No other hands, Nick? Calling once, calling twice.
No, the 2 remaining hands up have already spoken, so I think we're good.
Okay, with that, I will close the public comment period. I'm going to bring it back to the commission. I'm going to make a couple of comments and then I'll let the applicant respond to some of those comments. First of all, the question of Downingtown originally wanting 4 units. That proposal was always 3. I was on the planning commission when that came before, so I remember that one. I want to clarify that, you know, if this petition is denied tonight, we're not stopping the development of this lot. We may determine that this particular project is not suitable based on what they're asking for, which is a reduction of the lot size to 20 feet and an extra 5 feet for the back patio for railings. So the building itself is at 30 feet, which is allowed by zoning. We don't have the option to determine if that is, you know, too high because that's what's allowed. I want to just make that clarification. So when the Planning Commission starts its discussion and we look at the legal standards that we have to use to apply to our reasoning, that we kind of keep that in mind and we don't have discussions that are a little outside of our purview. Okay. With that, I would send this back to Chase, and if you would like to take a few minutes to address some of the comments that came up, then I'll let you do that now.
Alrighty, thank you. Aaron, do you have anything off the top of your head that you're wanting to share in response to any of those? I think you're on mute.
I don't. I'll just move it to whatever you want me to direct it to, or you can take control and you can use your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, could you start off with your other slide showing if we were to do 3 or 4 units?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the comments were aimed at size, too tall, shade, things like that. So if we were to not ask for these exceptions, as Aaron stated before, we would be able to build basically these 3 units or 4 units with the exact same footprint, shape, size, height. So as we go by the zone and what the code and standards show, we could do basically the same building with 1 less unit. We could do 5 apartments by right as well, which would also maintain the same amount of traffic for 5 units, and so on.
And we know what sells.
Alrighty. We just want to thank everybody for their comments, and for bringing these things up to our attention. We know we're aware of the general feeling of everything, but we know that these units can drastically help the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. We'll take it to the Planning Commission now. This is the time if you have comments or thoughts or additional questions, just have a discussion.
I would just like to echo your initial comments. I think they spent some time doing this very nice project, but I think a nice project can become a great project when some more time is spent on it and kind of modify some things, put some things together. Perhaps even reach out to the community councils that it involves to get some input. I mean, I think it can be a better project in my view. The sentiment is, the garage doors being too visible, those kind of things can definitely be improved on this project. Those are my comments.
Okay, thanks, Andreas.
Can I react a little bit?
Yes, go ahead.
So I do understand people's concerns about the garage door. I am concerned about the additional cost we are imposing on the developers when we send things back again and again and again for further review. It might not be obvious, but this does raise the price point at which they sell these, which indirectly affects the rents on all the other structures in the neighborhood. And so I am concerned about this form of land use regulation, because it does affect affordability fairly substantially, and the research on that is incredibly clear. I personally really like this design, again, save for the landscape, which is a fairly cosmetic thing to address. I will say, where I live a little bit further down the road, closer to the 9th district, and we have similar bungalows, similar sugar house, but there are some beautiful modern homes in my neighborhood. I don't happen to have the privilege of living in one of them, but I don't find that modernist design is really in serious conflict. And in fact, I think it kind of enhances the neighborhood to have that diversity of architecture. So I don't see that as a huge issue. So again, I am concerned about any additional constraints and sort of forcing the developer to go back and sort of revisit the plans again and again as a kind of way of increasing housing costs.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? I'll just state that first of all, my view on that is we get like one chance at this whatever the lot is, could be any lot. We're only going to see this development once in our lifetime. So I agree that if we were sending something back multiple times over and over and over, that would be a concern. But if we feel a project is really not hitting the mark, it is better to send it back and help the developer preserve their place in line in the queue so they're not starting over. Rather, if the option is we deny it or we send it back for some modifications, it's probably in their best interest to send it back versus denying it. But those are questions for every development, so I'm not pointing this one out. But I don't want commissioners to feel like, you know, we want to fast track things because of this, that, and the other. We want to have good projects, and I think everybody's showing that they're committed to that as well. I personally am not in favor of the 5 feet in height extension. I think a railing is fairly unimposing in terms of height, but I don't think a rooftop deck is appropriate use for this spot, given the single family homes along Westminster. The Downington project didn't have that as a constraint. So that's kind of my thoughts, but you know, I'm not voting tonight, so unless there's a tie. So it's back to the commission, and this is the time if you have thoughts or a motion or you want to, whatever you want to do, let's move forward.
This is Amy Burrows. I just want to say Allen Park is an absolute treasure. When you drove past there and there were these weird little houses here, which are gone now, you kind of looked at it and thought, what is that? I would love to find out what is going on over there. And I think now this part of Allen Park, if you've been there, it's front and center. It looks like, it feels like it's part of the park. And I think looking at this drawing, you kind of wonder, what is that, a dentist office? Or what is this building? And I just think there, like someone said before, there's just not a good enough trade-off to give additional height and additional, you know, narrower widths when what is the neighborhood getting? Westminster across the street is beautiful and it's a treasure. And this seems to be like not, like it doesn't belong. That's what I think.
Yeah, I'll kind of second the initial comments from Amy. Is with price, the market drives the price, not necessarily them having to design something again. And
Which Amy, John?
I like
Which Amy?
the first Amy.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of contemporary design, but this is just kind of a copy of a copy of a copy. I don't see a unique approach to this. I don't see taking the care and time it takes to see the context of the city around it. I don't see it trying to speak to the park really in any way, which is a huge missed opportunity. I'm always for height, but in this instance, I'm on the fence with it because if it was done in a way that was helping to accentuate the park and add a feature to this part of town, that would be a lot different than just a copy of what seems to be an attempt at modernism, but it's missing the mark. So that's my 2 cents.
Do I have anybody who's ready to make a motion?
I will make a motion.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Based on the findings and information listed in the staff report and the testimony and plans presented, I move that the Planning Commission approve the planned development request for the Central Park Townhouses, PLN PCM 2021-00886, and preliminary subdivision PLNS UB 2021-00882, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, specifically that the project includes a pedestrian walkway from the sidewalk on 1300 South.
1300 East.
1300 East. I'm sorry. That is a error by Aaron.
1300 East. 1300 East.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Andra and a second from Mike. Let's go ahead and vote on this motion. Amy.
No.
Okay. Mike,
Yes.
John,
No.
Andreas,
I will vote no.
Andra,
Yes.
Maureen.
No.
Okay. That motion fails in a vote from 4 no and 2 yes. I do need an action, so I will need an alternate motion.
I'll try to make it for you.
Thank you.
Based on the findings and information listed in the staff report and testimony and plans presented, I move the Planning Commission deny the planned development request for Central Park Townhouses PLN PCM 2021-00886 and preliminary subdivision PLN SUB 2021-00882 because evidence has not been presented to demonstrate the proposal complies with the following standards. And I would look at C, design and compatibility. 1, the scale and intensity is not compatible with the neighborhood. 3, doesn't maintain the visual character. And standard 4, that the facade doesn't have good pedestrian interest and interaction.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Maureen and a second from John. Let's vote on this one. We'll start with Andreas.
I will vote yes.
Okay, Andra,
No.
okay, Amy,
Yes.
Mike,
No.
John,
Yes.
and Maureen.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 4 yeses and 2 nos. Okay. So that project was denied. And moving on to the next agenda item, we have Stealth Towers text amendment. This is a PLN, case number PLN PCM 2020-00284. The planner is Aaron again.
Amy, can I ask, is it possible for us to take a 5 or 10 minute break? Would that be possible?
That is, and thank you, Andrew. So let's hold off on the next agenda item, and we will take a 5-minute break, coming back at 7:09.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Looks like we're still waiting for Amy Burrows. Just to check, is John, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Andreas, are you back? So we're waiting for Amy and Andreas.
Amy, I'm here. Can I leave my camera off while I'm eating?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I will do that. I'm here. Thanks.
All right. We're just waiting for Andreas, although we have a quorum without him, but we definitely want to.
Andres is here.
Oh, good. All right. It's hard when I can't see you, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let me get my multiple things going. We'll start over with this. So next on our agenda is the Stealth Towers text amendment, and that is case number PLN PCM 2020-00284. And the planner again is Aaron.
Hello again. Nice to be here. This is a request for a zoning text amendment. It's regarding stealth wireless telecommunication facilities, specifically those that are in the. It's a request to modify the zoning regulations to allow stealth towers between 35 and 75 feet in the PL district by conditional use. So I go over a definition of what exactly are stealth towers, and their antennas completely disguised as another object, otherwise concealed from view. So the intended use is concealed by the appearance of the facility. For example, this water tower to the right. To qualify as a stealth tower, it must conform with the dimensions of the intended disguise, and it must be in concert with its surroundings. Currently, stealth towers are permitted in all districts if they meet the lot and bulk standards of a given district, and that includes height exceptions such as flagpoles, church steeples, stadium lighting. There's a few others in that section, chapter 21A, 36. So a few things about the public lands zoning district where this request is located. It usually has individual lots or a small cluster of lots. It's often integrated with other districts, specifically smaller scale districts like single family, small height commercial districts, maybe RMF 30. Not usually larger districts. In those larger scale districts, the cell towers can be placed on top of buildings. So, but in those larger districts, the public use is usually allowed. Some examples are like the Fleet facility off of Redwood Road, which is in a manufacturing district. Usually in this district, there's schools, libraries, fire stations, and the like, police stations. Here's a height comparison. This tree is just for illustration purposes. Stealth tower could be anything, but just a kind of a visual to see the height of the proposed tower compared to surrounding zoning districts that usually surround the PL district. And then staff's recommendation is for the Planning Commission to forward a negative recommendation to the City Council regarding this proposal. I just wanted to go over some of our rationale for this denial. As proposed, it creates unpredictable outcomes as far as new buildings or new towers and what they can look like. The stealth tower definition is pretty open. And while this applicant is specifically asking for a tree at the police precinct at the Pioneer Police Precinct at 700 West, there are other things that could potentially be put up that could be out of character with the neighborhood, like an extra tall elevator shaft, elevator bulkhead. As discussed, it's out of scale with surrounding development. Allowing 75-foot towers in these districts is still going to impact non-public lands districts. There's challenges with the conditional use application process. It'll require additional staff time and resources, and that creates that community expectation of denial of a project. And we know with conditional use applications, state code requires, mitigation of negative impacts, but it's difficult to flat out deny a conditional use application. The proposed language is a bit confusing, and if the Planning Commission recommends approval of this request, we would request that the applicant work with us on modifying some of that language, specifically in the table in 21A 40090E. The table has some confusing what can and can't be allowed. And then this proposal also is not comprehensive regarding cell towers. And, staff is aware that some of the stealth towers need some updating, but that requires, comprehensive work, looking at the holistic view of what the community needs and what providers need. And at the moment, staff resources have been directed elsewhere by elected officials. And so with this request, staff was unable to really provide the full analysis that would be needed for a request like this. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners for staff?
I have a quick question regarding this conditional use, and it's more clarification. I am sympathetic to the concern of limited staffing resources to support each of these. And what can somebody clarify? And this has come up. We've seen a ton of these ADU applications where it seems like we are devoting a lot of staff time to kind of reviewing a very small kind of change. Can you review exactly what this conditional use means?
Yeah, I'm happy. This is Nick. I'm happy to jump in and answer this. So under Utah law, a conditional use is a use that might have an increased level of detrimental impacts over permitted uses in the same zoning district. And so it's used as a way to verify whether or not there's a detrimental impact. And if there is, if that detrimental impact can be reduced. State law doesn't say it has to be eliminated, just reduced. And if it can, then cities are required to approve conditional uses. And so over the years, they've become harder and harder to find reason to deny them. And it's harder. The way our zoning code is written with so many standards, that those standards are oftentimes intended to already mitigate the types of impacts that a conditional use is looking at. And so normally we get roughly about 25 to 30 conditional use applications every year, but we get about the equal amount of conditional use applications for ADUs. So over the last 3 years, our applications have doubled. Most of the ones that we get that are not ADUs are either cell towers, auto-related uses, or alcohol-related establishments, bars, things like that. It takes about between 60 and 70 staff hours per application to process, plus planning commission time, which, as the planning commission is well aware, when agendas have a lot of items on it, it delays other projects and other proposals as well. And when there's minimal impact that the commission may have on an application, it does raise the question as to whether or not it's worth taking something through a process like this, or if there's a better way to do it. But under the current statute, conditional uses, particularly in residential areas or next to residential areas, have to go to the planning commission.
And that is a state statute. So changing that would require a change at the state legislature level. Is that correct?
So the requirement that they have to be approved if an impact can be reduced is a state requirement. It's a city ordinance that says if they're in a residential zone or next to a residential use, then they have to go to the planning commission. So the city could change that if they felt it was warranted.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, with that, I will bring it to the applicant. I think it's Pete Simmons. Simmons.
Pete Simmons, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the commission. Just to, before you tonight is a application to amend the texting to allow for stealth facilities up to 75 feet in the PL zone. Just to kind of give you a little bit of history of how we got to this point is back in 2018, I started this project working at and looking into the area around where our Pioneer Precinct is. We approached the city about swapping out one of the light poles in Jordan Park. They were not interested in working with us. And as we all know, there's really no tall vertical assets in that area. So the next step was, because we had heard that there were issues with the police department and what they were experiencing. So we thought that might be a good opportunity. So that's when I looked at that location, noticed that there is a pretty good stand of monopine or pine trees in that area, tallest being 63 feet in height. And so we initially proposed an 80-foot monopine in that area, went to staff, talked to them about that. And this was back in 18. Staff didn't see an issue with it. We then proceeded to work with the city on preparing an agreement with Verizon, as well as we started on construction drawings for that facility, because as we know, permitted uses are stealth facilities are permitted in all zone districts in the city. As we started going through that process, we met with Shelley Fananen, and the city decided it might be a good idea to go through the DRT just to get some of their thoughts on what we were proposing. We did that. All the different departments were fine with what was being proposed, but we did have to reach out to the planning director, because as the city codes requires, the director is basically the one that approves the stealth designs. And so we approached this. I reached out to Joel Patterson at the time. We talked to him. That's when we were informed that based on current code, you are limited to 35 feet. And unfortunately, based on current code, there is no available height exceptions for stealth facilities. Currently, right now, you have out of, let's see, I think there's 5 varying height exceptions, one being chimneys, another being church steeples, elevator shaft, flagpole, light pole, and mechanical parapet. And so, unfortunately, none of those addressed monopines, water towers, or any other type of stealth facility. And so that's when we were told, really, unfortunately, we would be limited to 35 feet. But, I could put a monopole in a manufacturing zone within the district or in a commercial zone up to 100 feet, and I have in the city of Salt Lake. So as we continued forward through that process, we talked to staff about what to do next. At the time, we were informed that probably a good option would be to amend the code to see if we try to allow stealth facilities, or initially to amend the height exceptions area to allow us to get a little bit higher height. As we started going down that path, and again, when we talked to the staff at the time too, we were informed that unfortunately staff did not have the time to work on something of this nature, and it would really have to be put in the hands of the carriers if they wanted something done. So we went down that path with that direction. Initially, we came in with a proposal to allow stealth facilities as a permitted use in all zone districts, and we limited it to 60 feet, because in talking with Verizon's RF engineers, 60 feet was kind of the height that we could work with, because as you've seen in the staff report that you were presented, we provided some mapping that showed the varying height starting at 80 feet and going down from there, showing down to 30 feet. And as you can see, going through those slides, as you get lower in height, that network the service that we're providing starts to shrink. And therefore, and ultimately what that means is, as I go lower in height, that means I'm going to have to put up more towers in that area to provide the needed service that Verizon and their customers are looking for when they're paying their bills on a monthly basis. So we went down that path. We provided that the text amendment for the permitted use in all zones, 60 feet. Started getting some comments from staff. We started getting comments from different community councils that we had went and attended to. And the bottom line is, I think, the bottom line that we had heard was, really the community wanted to have the ability to have a say in what was being presented, what was being designed, because right now, with what's been going on in the city, they don't feel like they've had that opportunity. And so they were really pushing that, to see that the industry do something like that. And so we took all that information that we'd heard from the community and whatnot, and we went back, revised our amendment, and decided to focus only on the PL zones. But we also looked to get up to a little bit higher height, because ultimately for macro facilities, we need to see what we're broadcasting to, and as we go lower in height, then I'm going to start bouncing my signal not only off of buildings, but I'm going to be bouncing my signal off of the natural landscape and whatnot in that area. And so we like I said, we presented it with the PL zones and we limited it down. We looked at going with a maximum 75 feet height. That's what's before you. We went to other community councils after we revised our amendment. And, you know, I think a lot of them, from what I was hearing, was that, you know, they were glad to see that we were starting to go down the CUP process because that did open it up. It was unfortunate because it seemed like in the discussions that we were hearing, or that at least would be presented to the community councils, they kept kind of focusing on how CUPs aren't really the avenue to go. And that, you know, I keep hearing this discussions of, you know, it takes up too much staff time. Well, I mean, I was a planner. I spent a lot of time having to deal with conditional use permits when I worked for the city of West Jordan. I'm not certain that's, you know, that should be a reason to not proceed with a conditional use permit. But again, that's what's before you this evening. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer any questions. And I also have, we have a Nicholas Jensen should be out there somewhere. He's a Verizon RF engineer in case there might be any questions that come up for him. So we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simmons.
You're welcome.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, with that, I will open the public comment period. And Nick, do we have hands raised? I don't know if Patrick wants to speak on this.
I do see one hand raised, so we're going to call on Patrick DePaulis to see if he wants to speak on this. Patrick, did you want to speak on this item? I'm going to take that as a no.
Yeah, I think his hand might still just be raised from the previous.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I just walked on the wrong
okay.
pipe,
Sorry
excuse me.
Please go ahead and state your name for the record again, please, and you'll have 2 minutes. Oh, did he want to speak or not? There we go.
Hey,
Okay.
Patrick, did you want to speak on this item?
I didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I'm sorry for choking on a glass of water I just had too. So please forgive me.
No
Okay.
problem. Thank you.
If you would just click that hand icon again so it'll unraise, and then we'll know you're not wishing to speak. That would be helpful.
Nick, Judy Short requested to speak on this item.
Great. Thank you. Judy, you are unmuted.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to review the petition from Verizon Wireless, which is smaller in scope. That term's an interesting choice of words. While they're requesting it only be allowed in the PL Public Land Zoning District, they're asking for the towers to now be 75 feet tall instead of 60. They're also requesting stealth towers disguised as pine tree in the PL Lands District. All of our schools are in the Public Lands District. Stealth antenna must conform to the dimensions of the object it's being disguised as and put in a location that's in concert with its surroundings. We know that pine trees probably reach 75 feet, and flag poles might also. But water towers can be even 400 feet, especially in the east. We understand the need for these. We like to have good cell communication service, but we don't want these to be a by right process. There needs to be conditional use. The way this is drafted, these could be put up right against a school or on the edge of a PL parcel next to a home or apartment building. Do we know about the radiation concerns? Public schools need to be on at least a 5-acre lot, and the required setback ranges from 30 feet to 100. Front and corner side yards shall be maintained as landscape yards. And when a PL lot abuts a residential lot, landscape buffers in Chapter 21A 48 are required. Flagpoles aren't a bad choice in a schoolyard, but who will raise the flag up and down each day? Will the fence and equipment on the ground around these poles interfere with any sort of ceremony the school or other groups might have? We approve this only if it's a conditional use, so the siting of the pole and the type of pole can be reviewed by the neighborhood. Most schools are probably 30 to 40 feet tall. These will tower over the site. Does the school stand to benefit from any rent paid by Verizon for the use of their land? Would another use be to allow them on certain commercial lands where they blend in with an already tall development? Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Any emails that have come in?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay.
Just for the record, we did receive, you did receive a letter from the East Liberty Park Community Organization.
Yeah.
that
And
they
there's
wanted-
one from Yellcrest in our
Yeah.
Dropbox as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. With that, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission. Does the applicant have anything they want to say regarding the comments we just heard?
Well, I think we're not, and when she talks about in concert, I mean, definitely when you look at the area where Pioneer Precinct is in that location, what we're proposing is definitely in concert with that area and with the all the vegetation that's there. I mean, there, like I says, there's several different, pine trees that are in the rear area of the Pioneer Precinct and along the Jordan River corridor there that this facility would blend into. So I think also with every location, I mean, I think Aaron mentioned an elevator shaft. We wouldn't be building an elevator shaft unless it was part of a building. There's, we wouldn't just build an elevator shaft for that. I mean, that could be a possibility, but typically if it's within a CUP process, we would hope that we would be able to, the industry would be able to work with the city and the neighborhoods to create something that's in concert, because again, that is one of the criteria that's listed in your staff report, is that it has to fit into the surroundings. So I can't see how a staffer saying that, well, they can build an elevator shaft. Well, that doesn't meet your current requirements. So that would be null and void. So that's the only comment that I have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any thoughts or questions for staff or the applicant or discussion at this time?
I have a question for staff. I guess, what scenario do you see where we can provide cell phone towers? I mean, it is a critical part of infrastructure that we need to allocate for. And if we don't have time to review it and study each item, how are we going to provide that infrastructure?
So we've had these discussions with the applicant, specifically taking the time to find other solutions. And I want to make clear that stealth towers are currently permitted in all districts, provided they meet the lot and bulk standards of the given district. And really, it just comes down to presenting something that's comprehensive for the wireless communication standards, something that would, address the community's concerns in a way that, it covers the whole issue and not just these stealth towers in a single district. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, as we phase out the ADU approvals that we have, I mean, I get that these are very unique. I think it could be a planning commission issue to approve these types of things, because I do think they're valuable. It's an unfortunate part of our society that we have to have these things, but it definitely is something we need. So finding a way to kind of find a middle ground would be nice.
That's true. But what we have today, what we have presented for you right now, is the proposal by the applicant. And if you feel that it's something that needs to be addressed, reach out to the city council if that's a priority.
Any other thoughts from commissioners?
Amy, this is Amy Burrows, and I wrote to Michaela Octay and Amy earlier today because one of the public comments, page 91, is from the East Bench Community Council, and I was the chair when that when we held the meeting and asked our membership to vote for or against the text amendment. It's changed since then. I'm not in that position at East Bench Community Council anymore, and I don't have any financial stake in the company. So we felt like there wasn't a conflict of interest, but Ms. Octay wanted me to mention it, so it's on the record. So I feel like I'm still going to vote on this issue, but.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I included the old comments in the comment section, just so that you were aware of the conversation that's been going on over the past year.
I appreciate your bringing that up, though, Amy. So. All right, commissioners, any other questions or thoughts, or is somebody ready to make a motion?
I have a quick question for staff. Currently, what is it that, for example, Verizon or any other telecommunications, what do they quote unquote have by right as far as placing their stealth towers? Is there anything like that with them?
Yeah, so the lot and bulk standards for any given district, they can place that stealth tower in those districts as long as it is not a stealth, doesn't look like a stealth tower. There's some background noise happening. Sorry, it's a little bit distracting. But they also, there's some height exceptions in our code that allows additional things to go beyond the allowed height in a district, like church steeples, stadium lighting, flag poles, and there's a few other things. Mechanical equipment, elevator bulkheads. Those things are allowed to be higher than the height of the district. And so there are options. There are ways to do it. It doesn't fit what they have for this specific project.
Okay, so by right, gotcha. So they can go up to 35 feet, pretty much blanket type of a thing, but they're requesting going above 35. They want that to be as a conditional use, correct?
Yeah, up above 35 feet to 75 feet would be a conditional use.
Okay, and that's what they're requesting. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Can I comment on that, Chair?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're actually,
Okay.
We're in the commission discussion phase. Sorry.
Okay.
All right, commissioners.
Chairperson Barry, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council denies the proposed text amendment, PLNCPM 2020-00284 Stealth Wireless Facility Zoning Text Amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Amy and a second from Mike. And this is again a recommendation to the City Council, who will be the ultimate decider. Let's take a vote. Andra.
Abstain.
John.
Yes.
Okay. Andreas.
I will vote yes.
Maureen. Maureen? Did we lose Maureen? Oh, I cannot hear you, Maureen. I can see your photo now. Thumbs up or down? Thumb up. Okay, that's a yes vote for Maureen. And Amy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Your next step is the City Council on that one, Mr. Simmons. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item is Western Gardens zoning map amendment at approximately 550 South, 600 East. This is case number PLN PCM 2021-00420, and the planner tonight is Lex.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'm going to share my screen here for you. Are you able to see that?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. This is a request to amend the zoning map to change the zoning for the 2.3 acre parcel located at 550 South 600 East from CN Neighborhood Commercial to FBUN2, which is a form-based urban neighborhood district in its entirety. Parcel is currently occupied by the Western Gardens Commercial Center. This zoning map amendment change will facilitate the redevelopment of the parcel into a multifamily residential project. And staff is recommending approval with conditions, or actually no conditions, sorry. Just to orient you, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this property. This is the Western Gardens nursery. This is a photo of the street to the west of the Western Garden parking lot. This is Hawthorne Street, and this is looking towards the west. So they have these little bungalow cottages that abut this property to the west. And finally, just orient you to, this is right across the street from Trolley Square. I have a few comments that I'd like to make. There have been questions raised by the public during the review process regarding the necessity of an associated master plan amendment with this requested rezone. I wanted to touch on this subject briefly. It is the opinion of planning staff that a master plan amendment is not necessarily in this instance for the following reasons. The Salt Lake City Code section 21A.02.040 says, all master plans or general plans adopted by the Planning Commission and the City Council for the city or for an area of the city shall serve as an advisory guide for land use decisions. Amendments to the text of this title or zoning map should be consistent with the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the applicable adopted master plan or general plan of Salt Lake City. So this section says that zoning amendments should be consistent. It does not require strict compliance with an adopted plan. And this is consistent with what applicable state code says the role of plans are as well. Further, a master plan amendment is never required with a zoning amendment as long as it is not related to a public project. Section 21A.50 states, a decision to amend the text of the title or the zoning map by general amendment is a matter committed to the legislative discretion of the City Council, is not controlled by any one standard. In making its decision concerning a proposed text amendment or map amendment, the City Council should consider the following factors. One, whether a proposed text amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the city as stated through its various adopted planning documents. So the use of the phrase should consider doesn't require the City Council to make a positive finding on master plan compliance in order to approve a rezone. Of course, they'll consider it, but it provides a lot of flexibility. And in many cases, a zoning amendment may not be consistent with the future land use map, but it might be consistent with written policies and plan or consistent with other plans. I don't think there's anybody on this commission, but several years ago, Trolley Square, anybody who was involved in this, but several years ago, Trolley Square went through a rezone process on the parcel that they own on 600 South, right across, right around the corner from this Western Garden property. And that property is that parking lot that is connected by the bridge that goes over 600 South. The future land use designated in this designation in the Central Community Master Plan is medium residential mixed use, 10 to 50 dwelling units per acre for both of these properties. Both of these properties are and were seeking the same zoning designation, the FBUN2. Trolley Square did not choose to amend the master plan, nor was it required at that time. So based on the city code sections previously mentioned and remain consistent with the Trolley Square rezone process, it's planning staff's opinion that a master plan amendment is not necessary. And just as one final note on that, those properties are about 430 feet apart. So they are very close. The task before you this evening is to decide whether or not the standards for a map amendment have been adequately satisfied, and if so, to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to change the zoning designation on the subject property. As you're aware, no specific project has been proposed to accompany the map amendment request. Planning staff has provided an analysis of the 5 standards for zoning map amendments in your staff report and asserts that the standards have been met. The discussion this evening should focus on the map amendment standards. If and when a specific development proposal is submitted to the city, the design, the massing, the scale, zoning standards, historic preservation standards, etc., will be addressed at that time. And this leads me to my last point. Any new construction, and it's an important one, any new construction on the property is required to go before the Historic Landmark Commission for approval. This isn't a local historic district. Specific comments concerning the actual physical development on the property will be most welcomed and addressed as part of that process. And finally, I have received some additional public comments since the preparation and distribution of the staff report, and I placed those in your Dropbox for consideration. And with that, based on the analysis and findings listed in the staff report, it is planning staff's opinion that the project generally meets the applicable standards, and therefore planning staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation regarding the proposed zoning map amendment onto the City Council for consideration. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those for you.
All right, thanks, Lex. I have one to start us off. Since the Historic Landmark Commission, the HLC, will be reviewing any building project that comes down the road, is there a reason why we haven't asked them for their thoughts on this zone change?
You have the prerogative to ask them. So if you would like this to go to Landmarks, we can take this to Landmarks for their input.
So I guess just a general question, when this type of a scenario has come up before, which I don't recall seeing in my time on the Planning Commission, do you generally take it before the HLC to try to get their thoughts on a proposed zone change? Or do you just
have, yes.
You have? Okay. So that would be in line with what you have done in the past.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions for staff at this time?
Not a question, but I kind of just reverberate what you said. Actually, that's a good point. Since they're the ones that will be approving any future development, the HLC probably should be part of the discussion, I think. So that was a good point to bring up.
And under the code, the code says that you have the prerogative to forward this to the Landmark Commission for their input. So if that's your will, then we can do that.
Okay. Thanks, Lex. I think it's my understanding, and you can please correct me if I am wrong, but I think we have like 3 options in that regard. We don't have to request their input. We can make a decision tonight, whatever that is. We could table this and send it to Historic Landmarks for their comments and then hear it again later. Or we could make a decision and request a courtesy comment from HLC that their comments and review be included in the transmittal to the City Council. Is that correct?
Yes, all of those statements are correct. That was a mouthful.
Okay, so we do have options in that regard tonight if the commission wants to discuss that further regarding HLC's potential voice in this. Any other questions for Lex? Okay, we can always pose them if we need to a little bit later. With that, we have Tyler Morris and David Brems. Are they?
Yeah, this is Tyler.
There's David and Tyler on the list. Okay. Do you have a presentation you wish to give that you need a screen?
I think I can just speak through it. I have most of what I would present is just kind of redundant for what Lex included in the staff report. So I don't know that I need to kind of
Okay.
regurgitate that.
If there's anything you want Lex to bring up in terms of a visual, I am sure he'll be happy to do that for you. I'll just let you go. You have 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, kind of the context of this property, what we're asking for, and how impactful this is on that block there. I would just provide a little bit of background information. So we're working with the current owner of Western Gardens to potentially rezone this and develop a multifamily property here. One of the primary pieces of feedback we've gotten when we've had a couple of community council meetings has been that people are sad to see Western Gardens go. And I just want to say that the owners reached out to us. They're trying to transition out of that business, and they want to build something here that they can hold as kind of a durable retirement plan. They're friends of our company, and we're trying to help them get through that process. They'll stay in as owners, we'll stay in as part owners, and we'll move ahead. But I guess the takeaway is that we're not like trying to push Western Gardens out and get rid of that as a resource. I know people really value it around there. At another high level, I would just comment on the multifamily opportunity that this parcel represents. I mean, there's 3 full-service grocery stores within a block. You're 2 blocks from transit. You're a block from 7th East, a block 4th East for great auto transit access. You're a couple of stops away from downtown, a few stops away from the U. I mean, it's really just a very prime multifamily development parcel. And generally, the feedback that we've gotten from the community council and the neighbors seems to agree with that. And largely the concerns are about scale and bulk and how tall or big or how it fits in with the neighborhood here. And I think Lex did a good job of commenting on how FBUN2 works to address some of those by providing more significant setbacks and stepbacks from the residential portions of the neighboring properties. Another point that I would add, just relative to this property itself, is it's a big parcel, and part of what that kind of implies as part of the development is that we cannot just build one big kind of brick in the middle of it that pushes the boundaries of what's allowable in FBUN2, is it won't have sufficient buyer access. Effectively, you kind of have to either squish a deal in here and have it wrapped with access, or you have to split it in 2 and have access down the middle. And either way, you kind of break up the bulk of what would be a property on this site. And we've looked at it a lot of different ways, and there's no real way to get around kind of either of those functions. And just for background for kind of how we got here, we started 8 months ago, I think early this year, and we initially came in requesting a zone change to RO. The uses to the north and to the west are RO, and it seemed to us kind of like a logical way to move forward with it. That includes the Moda New House apartment building on 5th South there, and there's some commercial buildings on the corner. And we got significant pushback from the community, and it sounded like they were not receptive to the potential 60-foot height there. And it sounded like would like potentially an additional layer of oversight. We kind of took that feedback and came back with FBUN2, which from our end works as a really good transitional use on this site. Again, you have RO to the north that allows kind of 60 feet, 5 stories. You have kind of RMF 35 to the south for the historic homes that are down there, in the 35-foot range. And kind of our internal thought is the site is pretty well laid out to step its way up and truly transition in between, 2, 3, 4 story as you move to the north. And generally, I think, some of the concerns we've heard in the community council are just that, even if we believe that to be the case, maybe someone else buys this later and they believe differently and they try to build four stories on the whole thing, even abutting against the single family. And my general thought on that is again the setbacks and stepbacks that apply as you're coming up against those single family units. And and generally just the fact that the Historical Landmarks Commission will have oversight here as well. And I think they're going to echo what Lex has said in his report, that, you know, being reflective of the neighboring uses will include some transitions inside of the site like that. Let me see, I got a couple other notes, just to make sure I hit those. Yeah, the dimensions, oversight, step backs, and just the general, you know, applicability of multifamily here. Again, we think this is just a tremendous opportunity to add, you know, housing stock to this market and do it in a thoughtful way. We think FBUN2 creates an ideal envelope and additional layers of oversight to kind of shape that through, you know, input from historical landmarks and from planning as we continue down the road with this. And just the one other note that I think makes sense there is, you know, it doesn't remove any existing housing stock. It doesn't remove any existing historically contributing structures. It's really replacing a business that's kind of transitioning out, which was largely open parking lot anyway, and replacing it with what would be thoughtful, you know, multifamily development. So that's really my kind of take and background on the project. I appreciate everyone's time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morris. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this point? I appreciate your context that you know, the owners approached you, because I am also sad to lose Western Gardens. That's where I go to get my plants, so.
It has been incredibly consistent feedback that people are going to miss that, and I just want to. It's I don't, you know, developers are not well regarded in general by the public, and I don't think. I just want to get away from like us being big bad developer pushing someone out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your mentioning that. Okay, just hang tight. We're gonna go to the public comment period, and then we'll bring it back to you if we need to after that. So, okay, Nick, I don't see any hands. Oh, they're popping up. Okay, so if you are going to comment tonight, please again just state your name for the record before you start, and then you'll have your 2 minutes. Nick, if you want to start us off.
All right. I believe that the first person who indicated they wanted to speak on this was Cindy Cromer. So she's at the top of the alphabetical list. Yeah.
I think there's a representative of the community council with us, Randy Peary.
Oh, okay. We'll go
Thank you.
Randy first. Randy,
Hi.
you're unmuted.
Okay,
Hi.
and Randy, just a quick note, as a representative of the community council, you will have 5 minutes.
Oh, yes, thank you. So as stated, my name is Randy Peary. I live on Hawthorne Avenue, and I will be speaking on behalf of the Central City Neighborhood Council. As mentioned, the proposed redevelopment accounts for over 20% of the acreage on the block and will have a significant impact on the surrounding area. Based on conversations between Cottonwood Residential and our community since last June, it is accurate to say that many residents in the Central City Neighborhood Council and beyond are disappointed to learn of the proposed rezone, as well as the loss of Western Gardens as a resource and local business. The block containing the proposed rezone has historic resources identified as contributory on all 4 sides. To the north, the former Trolley Stables building containing the architect's office is a unique resource, not just in the Central City Historic District, but in Salt Lake City as a whole. To the west, Hawthorne Avenue, a private court with historic homes built for workers of the trolley company that have seen recent preservation-related investment. To the south, several single and multifamily homes that have also seen recent preservation-related investment. And to the east, the 600 East Medians, as well as the Trolley Square Barns, one of our city's most recognizable historic resources. Some of the community concerns are as follows. The lack of significant front yard setbacks like the ones in Cottonwood's original proposal and others in mid-rise developments, excessive hardscapes and lack of public amenities like open green spaces are already having repercussions in the Central City Local Historic District. Given the enormous financial gain that stands to be made by the Western Gardens property owners and Cottonwood and the impact to the neighborhood, what are the public benefits and the benefits to the community at large in the Central City neighborhood by allowing the rezone and development to take place? 600 East is already very traffic heavy and can be dangerous for pedestrians and bicyclists alike. Adding an additional parking lot with up to 150 parking spaces and increasing the amount of vehicular traffic would exacerbate the problem significantly. As mentioned, the Moda New House project, located directly to the north of Hawthorne Avenue, was originally at the same height as the original Cottonwood proposal. Notably, the original proposal for New House was set back 30 feet from the north property line of the cottages on Hawthorne. This was viewed by staff of the Planning Commission and the Historic Landmark Commission as not being sufficiently historically sensitive. To address this, the applicant for New House pushed the project 85 feet back from their original proposal for a total rear yard setback of 115 feet where it currently sits. The proposed rezone to FBUN2 of the Western Gardens parcel is incompatible with the Salt Lake City Community Preservation Plan. The Salt Lake City Community Preservation Plan articulates specific policies and actions that, quote, will help preserve those areas of the city that are uniquely historic and tell the story of the city's historic past through spaces and structures, while also providing tools to stabilize neighborhoods and areas within the city that are connected by community character more than a specific historic uniqueness, end quote. The FBUN2 zone allows for significantly increased building height when compared to the current CN zoning. For example, FBUN2 allows for development up to 4 stories with a maximum height of 50 feet, double the height than that allowed by the current CN zoning, and taller than all of the historic resources on the block, which is why we feel it is incompatible with the Salt Lake City applicable master plans, including the Central Community Master Plan and the Salt Lake City Community Preservation Plan. The Central City Local Historic District is likely the least economically advantaged historic district in Salt Lake City. Much effort and attention in our city is spent on the preservation of the mansions and more affluent neighborhoods of South Temple, the Avenues, Yale Crest, and Capitol Hill, which invoke feelings of grandiose historic nostalgia. Less attention, at least within the broader community, is given the preservation of more modest historic homes and cottages of the kind seen on Hawthorne Avenue and elsewhere throughout the Central City Local Historic District. The Central City Neighborhood Council believes that there are other zoning options that would allow development of the parcel where Western Gardens currently sits that would be more compatible to the historic nature of the area, all applicable master plans, and the Salt Lake City Community Preservation Plan. The current proposal by Cottonwood would impact the Central City neighborhood negatively and significantly decrease our enjoyment of our gem of a neighborhood while adding little to the value of the community and Salt Lake City as a whole. It is also our strong belief that given the nature of the area and the unique contributions of the landmarks that we are discussing, that it is imperative that this at the very least be reviewed by the Historic Landmarks Commission prior to further discussion. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. Next up, Nick.
Give me just one moment here. Now we'll go back up to the top of the list, and I believe Cindy sent an email saying she wanted to speak on this, so we're going to start with Cindy Cromer. Cindy, you are unmuted.
Thank you very much. So I appreciate, let me start out by saying, I appreciate the professionalism of the planning division, which addresses the proposal brought before it. However, in this case, I don't feel that's the best zone. So for me, it's really Groundhog Day. The city is going to persist in forcing the form-based code into a traditionally zoned historic district. And we're going to keep doing this until we get it right. About 6 years ago, Trolley Square Ventures began a process which proved to be time-consuming, frustrating, and expensive for the city, the residents, and the developers. At the time, I said that we needed a small area plan as the city forced to zone never evaluated for use in a historic district into the block south of Trolley Square. You can tell I have a lot of scar tissue on this subject. There was no small area plan then, and there won't be now. Here's why the FBUN2 is inappropriate on this block. It's a blank check that leads to a wrestling match between the Landmarks Commission, the members of the community, and the developers. The FBUN2 sets up an adversarial relationship, leaving the Landmarks Commission to deal with the hard part. The FBUN2 sets the developers' expectations too high, and 6th East is so very different from 600 South, where the city approved the FBUN2 years ago. It is the essence of the Central City Historic District, with its designated bikeway, its pedestrian corridor, its landscape medians, and it has a human scale. All of those things are lacking on 600 South, which is the off-ramp freeway. The appropriate zone here, I believe, is the RMU 35. The Landmarks Commission can grant additional height over the 35 feet allowed in that zone. And there are options for greater density and commercial uses. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, Cindy.
Next down the list is Jen Colby. Jen, you are unmuted. Jen, can you hear us? All right, we will come back to Jen, and we'll move down to the next person is John Davis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. This is Jack Davis. I'm a resident of District 4, currently living on 600 South. As someone who's been very active in preservation-related efforts, specifically in the Central City Local Historic District, which is perhaps the most threatened local district, as well as the most modest means historic district in our city, I believe that the proposed zoning map amendment is inconsistent with many of the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the city as stated through its various adopted master plans, including the Central Community Master Plan and the Community Preservation Plan adopted in 2012. Rather than supporting these purposes, goals, and objectives, articulating these master plans, the proposed zoning map amendment, if approved, would serve to really frustrate these plans in a significant way. Notably, the staff report does not even address the preservation plan adopted as recently as 2012 and ignores many of the relevant policy prescriptions in the Central Community Master Plan. As I've detailed in my extensive written comments on this proposal that are in the staff report package, the proposed map amendment to FBO2 would allow for development that's incompatible and out of scale relative to existing adjacent single-story properties, many of which are contributing historic, one of which is historically significant. And finally, a rezone to FBO2 would not implement adopted plans of the city relating to historic preservation, but instead would create an undesirable zoning mismatch between the base zone and the historic overlay zone, which is a specific concern identified in the preservation plan. This unduly places the burden on the Historic Landmarks Commission to regulate mass with an overscaled base zone. Again, this is discouraged by the preservation plan because the Landmarks Commission would be better, their time would be better served addressing design rather than dealing with overscaled projects. I would encourage you to forward this decision or forward consideration of this proposal to the Landmarks Commission for a hearing or a work session to evaluate the historic appropriateness of this zone relative to the overlay zone prior to forwarding any recommendation to the City Council. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, next up is Casey O'Brien McDonough. Casey, you are unmuted.
Perfect, thanks. And hello again. So I lived about a decade on 6th East, and I'm very familiar from, my long time in Salt Lake City of Western Gardens. Setting aside private property, it's their right to do what they want with their property. But as I made in earlier comments, they're asking for something other than what they know their property is. And they've owned it a while, I believe. So I think they've been aware for a long time what their property is zoned. To me, this feels like another ask of we want more. We want more height, we want more density, we want more units, we want to maximize, we'll say, their investment. And I would just say, after hearing the community council comments and other comments, I would say the biggest factor for me is this is in the heart of the historic district. If you think of the one place in the Central City District that means the most is Trolley Square. And this property is next door on the avenue, on the boulevard. And I don't think this is the right answer. I think that's why people are talking about the master plan, about community plans, about all those other planning options. It needs more thought. And it needs more thought on a bigger stage. And I think the Planning Commission, that's why people are talking about Historic Landmark Commission. I think this is too large and too important of a property for the zoning change. So I would encourage you not to vote for this and encourage the property owners to work with the community council and with the local residents that are mostly impacted in their homes nearby to find a better solution for them maximizing their investment. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just say, if you are, you've concluded your comments, if you'll click that hand again so it lowers, then we know you're not looking to speak again. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna try Jen Colby again. Jen, you are unmuted.
She's muted again.
Yeah, it looks like. Jen, are you there?
Nick, I have an email comment that I can read in the meantime to give Jen maybe another minute.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, and I would just say, Jen, if you are able, if you want to send in an email to planning.comments@slcgov.com, let us know if you did want to speak on this issue. That would be helpful.
Right. Here's the email comment. Dear Planning Division and Commission, I join my fellow neighbors in Central City in opposition to this rezoning petition. While FBUN2 has great potential for the future, in its current state, nothing should be rezoned to it until the problems and flaws which it presents are addressed and fixed. We in Central 9th have seen firsthand for many years the unintended side effects of FBUN2. We have seen no work done to address these concerns and therefore oppose the zoning from being applied elsewhere until the serious work at correction occurs. Major concerns with FBUN2 include some of the following. First, FBUN2 allows very large projects with significant impact to neighborhoods to be built with little to zero community engagement. Projects which dramatically change the nature and feel of an area permanently are allowed by right without any offsetting quality of life improvements for those who already live or work in the neighborhoods where they are built. Second, in Central 9th, we've seen how developers have taken advantage of FBUN2 to build very poor quality projects which will not stand the test of time. Third, FBUN2 discourages green space and trees. A simple walk around Central 9th would show anyone the green space desert it's helped create. It would be a terrible shame for such a lovely green space as Western Garden to become a micro-unit nightmare of FBUN2 units you see on West Temple and throughout Central 9th with no green space, no trees, no common space for residents to enjoy, and certainly zero benefit to the quality of life for existing surrounding residents and businesses. Fourth, FBUN2 has little influence in ground level engagement, which might possibly offset some of the extreme density it allows. But instead, our experience is seeing mailboxes and laundry rooms through ground level windows. There are other issues with FBUN2 which have been brought to planning and the administration's attention for several years, yet we see no movement to make the minor tweaks and adjustments which would make it a great zoning type for Salt Lake City. Until these serious concerns are addressed and rectified, we cannot in good faith endorse its use in any part of the city. This is from Paul Johnson, Chair of the Central 9th Community Council.
All right. Jen did send an email indicating that she did want to speak. So we're going to try again here, and hopefully we can get some troubleshooting going. Jen, I've unmuted you again. Can you try to let us know if we can hear you by speaking up? There we
Can
go.
you hear me? Oh,
We
okay.
can.
Yeah. I did a system test and it seemed to reset something. So here I am. Okay. Do you want to give me my 2 minutes here? I'll start in a sec.
Absolutely. Just state your name for the record as always, and you're good to go.
Thank you very much. Jen Colby, District 4. First, I want to thank the Cottonwood residential team for coming to the Community Council several times and being willing to present, consider, and discuss. I do appreciate that and attended those meetings. I also want to address my concerns about Lex's comments about the sort of letter versus the spirit of the law on all of the master plans and city plans being advisory. I think with any sort of rational planning process, we need to be following them as closely as possible and having some wiggle room just to avoid this and sort of grease the skids for developers is problematic to me. So I would ask you to stick with rational planning and really do your best job there. But in any case, for this proposal, I concur with all of the previous comments. I think one of the problems here is we confuse density with complexity, and complexity of urban form is what is so critical for healthy, vibrant cities. And just saying, like with the RO, well, the other adjacent properties were RO, and therefore it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, especially in a historic district. I support reconsidering this to RMU 35. I think it's very crucial to consider what will be granted by right, and certainly this will be a major gift. I appreciate the Western Gardens owners, and I realize they have the right to make money off their property, but I think it also needs to be within to the benefit of the community if it's going to be a major upzone. And I do appreciate it's coming from commercial to residential or mixed use. That's super important, but I think staying within the future land use densities and really working to make this compatible with the city is important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. Any other emails, Kelsey or Chrissy? I don't know who's manning the emails.
It's Kelsey. Hi.
Okay.
No,
I realized
no
I don't know.
right now. Yeah.
Okay. With that, I will close the public comment period, and I will allow the applicant to address any of the items that came up during the comments. If you want to take a few moments to do that, I'll give you that time now.
Yeah, I'll take a couple of moments. I mean, all this that, you know, I appreciate the exchange we've had with the neighbors and the community council. If nothing, they've been incredibly consistent and transparent with us, right, on concerns, and I understand why. They're the immediate neighbors there, and it's an important parcel in the broader city, and it's particularly important to them because it is their actual neighbor. I would back up on the request for the rezone in the first place from CN is because CN, to my understanding and our discussions with our design team, is that it doesn't allow dwelling units whatsoever. So I mean, we're going to kind of side shift from commercial to residential, and then it's an upzone in terms of height, but the height isn't really what's driving the rezone request to begin with. And some of the other comments related to contributing to Trolley Square, you know, I think we thought through this a lot as we've been thinking about how, you know, you would reposition this property, and I think one of the best ways to help contribute to Trolley Square is to deliver additional bodies and consumers for that area. You know, we could potentially put additional retail or office on the ground level there, but I think that detracts from what's available at Trolley Square, and our general thought is multifamily would be more applicable and helpful in this area. You know, there's a number of comments about kind of setbacks and stepbacks and height and kind of RMU 35 as a potential alternative use. We thought about all that as well. We thought about RMU 35. We thought about RMU 45. We thought about you know, FPUN2 and RO. And you know, I would just refer back to kind of my initial thought where, you know, you have 4-story use to the immediate northwest that's, you know, almost 50 feet in height, RO zone on that side. You know, we think FPUN2 with a max height of 4 stories and 50 feet creates, you know, an excellent opportunity for transition between that height and, you know, the 35-foot height to the south. If you go with, you know, RMU 35, it doesn't really transition at all. It just reflects what's related to the south and carries it to the north. So, I mean, in terms of transitional use of that site, that was our thinking on how we got there. I certainly understand, you know, the defense for RMU 35. Aside from the height, the setbacks and the other kind of guiding factors there are pretty similar. There's actually smaller side yard setbacks for the RMU zones. You know, the rear yard is a little bit deeper in RMU where it's 30 instead of 20, but functionally, because of fire access, you have to end up at 30 with FPUN2 anyway, just to be able to create access for fire. So for us, from a functional standpoint, you end up at a very similar place, but you're able to put a little bit of 4-story product to the north. And you know, our overall thought on FPUN2, and I know people have issues with that. Some people have issues with RO. We've heard a lot of opinions on all of these. Is that part of the additional appeal from FPUN2 is, you know, in addition to the Historical Landmarks Commission that we expect to have a great deal of back and forth with, and understand that they'll have a tremendous amount of impact on bulk and scale and all of that here, that, you know, we would also have those discussions with planning under FBUN too, just get guided by the form-based characterization. So we thought providing, you know, going for a zone that require additional kind of input from planning would be generally viewed as optimal for the site. So I'm trying to see if there's any other notes that I missed here. I think that hit the bulk of them. But again, you know, we're local. We want to build something that people like and that that's enduring. And we appreciate the input from all the folks here. And we appreciate there's what we view as a kind of natural creative tension between you know, what different groups think makes sense on this site, and you know, we're looking forward to figuring that out as we move forward either way.
All right, thank you, Ms. Morris. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant or staff? Lex, I have a couple things. One is, could you talk about the Salt Lake City Preservation Plan?
Yeah, what specifically would you like me to tell you?
I'm going to admit that I am not as familiar with that plan. It seems to rarely pop up in reviews. So is there provisions in that aren't being supported by the FBUN, or is it your opinion that it's in concert, that they don't conflict?
Well, I have not analyzed that, and I certainly don't know that plan off the top of my head. So that's a good question.
Okay. And do you, off the top of your head, know where nearby there are other FBUN2 zones?
Well, the Trolley Square property on 6 South was rezoned to FBUN2, and that went through the city council. So that's, again, about 430 feet away from this property, approximately.
Okay. Is that like, because I don't think this is a terribly widespread zone yet. So that's about the only spot in that vicinity.
That's the only one that I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah. So we only have that one. All right. Those are my questions. Anything else from commissioners? Thoughts, discussions?
Yeah, I have a few comments. You know, I'm very familiar with this site. I used to park in it every day for 2 years. And the majority of the site is a giant empty parking lot that's incredibly underutilized. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen it even a quarter full in the entire over 2 years that I parked there every single day. And I think Trolley Square, you know, I'm generally against malls and downtowns, but because of the historic nature of the site and the fact that it's actually a really good use and a really good layout for the type of use that it has, and it's very underutilized at the moment. I think adding more people and walking distance of that spot actually helps quite a bit with preserving it, because eventually if people continue to not go, it will become obsolete because there's a lot of competitors in the market. So I think thinking through these types of things are important for us to kind of think of what the future of this area would be, and what would happen if Trolley Square just, you know, ended up going away because lack of foot traffic and lack of development. And what would that become? So those are questions that I think are a little bit bigger than just the one property. And I would kind of bring that up. I would also say that there's a lot of transit really close to this area. You're in walking distance from both the park as well as the transit stops. So it's a very good area to get people out and moving around. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Andrew.
I mean, I guess I would just say that I understand the residents really like this particular retail opportunity, but to echo the call-in user, I think I'm not sure who that was exactly, but like if the business owner is not, this is not the highest and best use of their land, there's nothing we can do to preserve the fact that it's a garden center. I mean, if a garden center is just not good land use, that's not going to stay regardless of whether this gets rezoned or not. They're going to try to find some better way of using their land and selling to, they don't seem to be the sort of owner that knows how to do that themselves. They're going to sell to some developer. And so I think I understand there's many shops I personally really, really like, and it just sometimes they can't be supported because there's not enough people there that want this. And of course, I think garden stores are maybe especially threatened by online retail.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? I think, again, I want to reiterate the choices that are available to us regarding some of the Historic Landmark Commission comments. One, we can make a decision and forward a recommendation to the City Council, just flat out. We can table this and ask for HLC comments and any additional information we feel we didn't get. Or we can make a decision and request that staff gets courtesy review of the HLC and includes those comments in the transmittal to the City Council.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
you had a question earlier about the preservation plan
I
and
did.
its role, and I wanted to give some insight into what that plan says, as broad as I can, given it's fairly lengthy, and how it relates to what we do as a city when it comes to preservation. As a pretty significant portion of that plan discusses city actions, meaning what we should do to promote preservation, engaging various tools to help support our preservation efforts of the city, things like density bonuses, updating surveys, changing codes to preserve other historic elements like signs and things like that, all things that we've done as a city and continue to do. The plan itself does not get too heavy into specifics about areas and what should happen with preservation. Instead, it defers to ensuring that our master plans, our community plans and things like that are including preservation in those plans and in those processes, and it becomes a factor for decision making. And so it's much different than a community plan in that regard and other citywide plans. But I did also want to highlight something that I'm not sure if it was mentioned or if it was, or if that maybe it was forgotten, but in about 10 years ago, in 2012, the City Council adopted an update to the Central Community Master Plan as it pertains primarily to 400 South. And in that, it created different stationary goals around the track stations. And around the trolley station, which includes in this area, there's a very specific statement about 600 East. And I'm gonna read that just to make sure that it's on people's minds as they're making decisions here. But this is I guess action item number 12, whatever it's called in the plan, and it says identify zoning solutions for the block faces across from Trolley Square on 600 East and 600 South. The focus should be to encourage development on vacant parcels, increase residential density, and promote the preservation and adaptive reuse of contributing structures. And then it goes on to talk more specifically about the 600 South frontage. And so I think it's important to note that that update to the plan is specific to this block face and to this site. And it gives us direction on those parcels that don't contain contributing structures to increase the residential density. And so I think that that's important to note as you consider this proposal.
And Nick, just to follow that up, that was outlined in the staff report on pages 11 and 12.
Mhm. Thank you both, Lex and Nick, for that. All right, commissioners, anybody ready to make a motion or any further thoughts you wish to articulate? Who was that?
It's Andra.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, based on the analysis and findings listed in the staff report, testimony, and the proposal presented, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation regarding the requested zoning map amendment for the property located at approximately 550 South, 600 East from CN Neighborhood Commercial to FB-UN2, that's Form-Based Urban Neighborhood District, onto the City Council. The Planning Commission finds that the proposed amendment complies with the review standards as demonstrated in Attachment D of the staff report.
I'll second that.
Okay. Would there be any consideration, Andra, to include a condition to request a courtesy review from the Historic Landmarks Commission?
You know, to be honest with you, I feel like that would delay further and add further costs to the development project. And given the clarity of what Nick just read to us, I don't see that as a necessary amendment.
Okay, I would just clarify, it would not delay anything. Their comments, their review would just be included in the transmittal. There would not be an additional meeting or thing that the applicant would have to go through. It would just be them giving their thoughts and comments for the city council to consider.
In that view, would I
It's fine. I just wanted to put that out there for the record. So I have a motion from Andra and a second from John. Go ahead and take a vote on that. Amy?
I'm gonna vote. If this doesn't pass, we can do another action item, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, I would also just add that I would be open to adding the comments, even though I seconded the motion.
Okay, so we do have a motion without the comments, but if it does, if we end up taking a different action motion, then we'll consider that. Mike?
Yes.
Okay, Maureen?
Yes.
Andreas?
I will vote no.
Okay, John?
I guess I'll vote yes.
And Andra?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 4-2. On to the city council for you, Mr. Morris.
Thank you all for your time, and thanks again to the neighbors. I'm sure we'll have a lot of interaction with everyone moving forward. So I appreciate it.
Sure you will. Okay, thank you. Moving on to our last agenda item. This is a future land use map and zoning map amendments for the former Sugar House Fire Station. This is case number PLN PCM 2021-00914 and PLN PCM 2021-01007. And Nick is going to lead us out tonight.
All right, give me 1 second. I'm trying to make sure I can get my screen to share here.
Okay, and Kelsey, then will you be monitoring the public comment period?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Oh, it's sharing the wrong screen, I think. Can you guys see
No,
that presentation?
That is the
okay.
conversation one.
Sorry, it keeps jumping back and forth, but I've got multiple screens up. So this is a proposal that was initiated by Mayor Mendenhall at the request of the RDA, who's the property owner, to rezone the property that is the former site of the old fire station in Sugar House across from Fairmont Park, and was for a while the temporary home of the library. The proposal would do two things. It would update the Sugar House community plan, the future land use map, from what is now designated as public lands and institutional to business district mixed use at the town center scale. And it would change the zoning map from PL Public Lands to Central Sugar House Business District to match the properties to the northeast and kind of southeast. Our recommendation is to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council, and we're going to explain why here. First, some orientation of the site. These are pictures of the buildings that are on there. Excuse me. You'll note on the bottom left is the Sugar House Business District kind of maintenance facility. Any future development of this site would include within the site updated spot for that, or would include finding a new location within the business district or close to the business district for that function. The rest of the building right now, it is currently vacant because the Sprague Library is back open and the fire station has a new building. This is what the Sugar House Community Plan says for this specific site. It's the business district future land uses. You can see it identifies this as institutional and public lands in this portion of the plan. And you can see that lighter purple, which is that business district town center scale. And then the property itself, hopefully you can see that red oval there. It's that blue kind of right in the middle of that map. But the plan also includes direction on the expansion of the Sugar House Business District and includes this property within that. And that's on page 6. This map is on page 16 of the Sugar House Master Plan. Again, you can see the area in the light blue with the dark blue outline is where the expansion should be. And you can see that when this plan was adopted, there was some other zoning districts in the area that have since been changed to this Central Sugar House Business District. That's that CB directly towards the bottom of the red circle that shows the subject property, and the CS to the right. Those have been changed to Central Sugar House Business District as well. The current zoning of the property, a broader context map on the left, where you can see in pink the Sugar House Business District. The green space directly to the left of the subject property is Fairmont Park that contains a couple of different uses. Obviously the park, the Fairmont Aquatic Center, and the Boys and Girls Club. And then a zoomed in version so you can see the properties. It should be noted that the RDA also owns the property directly to the east. And the intent, I believe, is to combine these parcels or all of these parcels into one potential development site. Again, our recommendation is that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to adopt the proposal because it helps implement the Sugar House Community Plan. And with that, that is the end of that presentation. Are there any questions? We also have Tracy Tran from the RDA in attendance who can help answer any questions that you may have about the future of the site.
Okay, so I mean, I know this one really well. So you're going to combine that with what is the old DI on Highland. What is that parcel zoned now? The old DI?
It is the Central Sugar House Business District 1, which
Okay.
is the proposed zoning district for this piece.
That's what I thought. Any other questions for Nick at this time, or Tracy for the RDA? Okay, seeing none. Kelsey, do we have anybody who has indicated they wish to speak by raising their hands?
Judy Short would like to speak on this item.
Judy,
Okay.
you are unmuted.
Thanks.
All right.
Hi, I'm Judy Short. The proposals to rezone 1085 and 1095 Simpson Avenue and 1104 Sugarmont Drive from public lands to CSHBD1 Business District Mixed Use Town Center Scale. This would allow the parcels to redevelop along with the adjoining parcel at 2226 Highland, the site of the former Desert Industry Building in Sugar House. That parcel is already Sugar House Business District 1. We heard this issue at the October 11th meeting of the Sugar House Community Council, and we've been soliciting comments from the Land Use Committee. We've received just a few. Everybody looks at me like, Well, of course. Why do I have to make a comment? We believe this change is consistent with the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the city through the Sugar House Master Plan. To leave these 3 parcels public lands would make the parcels very difficult to redevelop, and they could sit vacant for many years. They're certainly an odd shape. Changing it to the Sugar House Business District 1 zone means the extra land can be utilized within the bigger parcel to enhance the larger project. It could be an outdoor plaza or a community garden to be used by the tenants of the larger building. With the streetcar going on either the north or south side, it opens a possibility for a transit area business district, like magazines, books, flowers, bakery, to enhance the plaza of the larger buildings. There'd be a myriad of opportunities for a productive use, rather than isolated as a small, funny-shaped parcel. Public facilities are adequate, and we ask that you approve this request and update the future land use map.
Thanks, Judy. Anyone else, Kelsey?
Not at this time.
Okay, and no emails?
No.
Okay. Seeing that, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for a discussion or a motion.
This is Amy Burrows.
there's
I'll make a
no-
motion.
What was that?
This is Amy. I said I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Go ahead, Amy.
You're ready for that? Okay.
Okay, go
Based on the
ahead.
information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing and the discussion of the commission, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council adopt PLN PCM 2021-01007 and PLNP's CM 2021-00914, amending the future land use map in the Sugar House Community Plan and zoning map as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks. I have a motion from Amy Burrows and a second from Mike. Let's take a vote. We'll start with Andreas.
Thank you. I will vote yes.
Thank you. John,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Andra,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
Okay, great. That motion passes. Good luck, Tracy Tran, on the next stage of that development with the RDA. That concludes our meeting tonight. I want to remind those who are going to be able to attend that we have a second meeting in December next Wednesday. So we'll see most of you here again to finish out the year. But with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you,
and good
everybody.
night.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you.
Amy.
Good night.
Everybody.